Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei got his powers from Leviathans and harem with all? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Skylinemaster for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Let's start this video. Rainier was satisfied with her task. She killed him, Issei Get, the boy with the sacred gear that could interfere with her plans. It was almost unfair that she had to kill him, a weakling who hasn't amounted to anything in life yet, and would never get to any more. Or would he? Rainier didn't notice the black puddle underneath Issei's body. The blood from Issei mixed with the black liquid as the liquid rushed into his body through the skin. Rainier turned her back away from the corpse, intending to walk away from her latest victim. Issei, alive but something other than human now, coughed up the red blood that was in his throat. Ahahaha! Issei dusted himself off, getting to his feet as Rainier turned back around. She couldn't believe her eyes. There he was, Issei Get, pulling the light spear out of his stomach. Black blood dripped from the wound in his chest as the wound closed up. Issei looked up, catching Rainier's eyes. An unsettling smile appeared on his face as he crushed the spear. Well, this will do, I guess. I've fallen from that angel to here. It's something, Issei muttered as a wicked smile appeared on Rainier's face while another light spear materialized in her hand. Why won't you die for your girlfriend? She said sweetly as she launched the spear at Issei, who looks unconcerned at the projectile. Ugh! Issei stared down at the lodged spear in his body in shock. His expression quickly turned into a twisted one as he pulled this spear out and launched it back at Rainier. That tickles. Why don't you try harder? Issei said, as he walked towards the fallen angel, whose sadistic expression turned into one of concern. How are you still alive? Why won't you just die already? She said, creating 6 light spears. She sent all of them flying at Issei, who slowly advanced on the fallen angel. All 6 hit the former human, but had no noticeable effect on slowing him down. 2 spears hit his legs, 2 hit the chest, and 2 hit the throat. Issei pushed all of them out of his body, closing the wounds as he neared the fallen angel. What are you, freak? Rainier panicked, taking flight with her wings. Where do you think you're going? Issei appeared under her, grabbing her by the calf of her right leg. He pulled her down, violently slamming her down to the ground, causing a large crack to appear in the park. She crawled away on all 4s, but Issei kicked her in the butt, causing her to skid for a few feet before she got to her knees, her back still turned to the monster that was about to end her life. Get up, get your pretty ass up, Issei said, grabbed her by the left shoulder. Rainier spun around as he did this, lodging a light spear in his stomach and twisting it around. Issei looked down with a disappointed look before looking up close at Rainier's shocked face. If the first 100 times didn't work, try again, right? Issei said, backhanding Rainier to the ground. And they call us stupid. Issei rolled his eyes before removing the light spear from his stomach. He twirled it around for a moment before throwing it at the fallen angel. It was a direct hit, nailing Rainier to the ground through her stomach. Please, Issei. Don't kill me. What about our date? We haven't finished it yet, Rainier said as Issei crouched down to get eye level with the injured fallen angel. This was a date? What is a date without food? Issei asked as his head morphed, revealing a row of sharp and jagged teeth. Rainier screamed as the last thing she saw was the inside of Issei's mouth. Issei devoured her whole, chewing for several seconds as he stood back up. That was a good meal, he said after belching. Now, let's see what that whore had in her head, Issei said as he morphed into Rainier's form. Interesting. Angels, fallen angels, devils, monsters, gods, Rainier said, looking up at the sky and the setting sun, all beneath us mighty Leviathan. This is going to be so much fun, she said with a smirk. There's more of these weak, fallen angels out there? Rainier asked, a ravenous smile appearing on her face. Alright, let's go eat, I'm hungry, she muttered to herself, flying to the church where she stayed with the rest of her group. Rainier landed near the entrance of the church, before retracting her wings into her body. The Leviathan stumbled up the steps of the church, her left hand on her stomach. The sound of a stomach grumbling was heard as she made it to the top of stairs. She pushed the door extremely hard, causing it to fly off its hinges. A quick glance around revealed the presence of the 3 other fallen angels, all standing beside the knocked-over pulpit. Donasek was the first one to glance at Rainier as she walked in. So it's done? He asked, glancing at his comrades beside him, and then back at Rainier. Oh, are you alright? Calawarner asked, having noticed the ravenous expression on Rainier's face. Rainier stopped a few meters away from the rest of her comrades, an unsettling smile on her face the entire time as she started to address her comrades. No, I'm not alright. I'm very, very hungry right now, and would like a snack. she said slowly before immediately rushing at Middlet, who was standing the closest to her. Rainier immediately stuck her fist through Middlet's chest, injecting her with black ooze, the poisonous Leviathan blood. The sight caused the two remaining fallen angels to jump back in shock as Rainier pulled her arm back and allowed Middlet's corpse to fall to the ground. Rainier examined her blood-covered arm as Calawarner and Donasek materialized light spears. We are still poisonous here as well, she remarked as she lazily cast her glance towards Calawarner. Rainier, the hell is wrong with you? Calawarner said. Nothing, I just haven't eaten yet. Rainier replied. She charged at Calawarner, who stuck her light spear into Rainier's stomach. Rainier grinned as she grabbed Calawarner by the arm, pulling her in and eating her with her jaws. Donasek snuck around Rainier as Calawarner was being devoured and punched her in the back of the head. Really? That is the best you can do? Rainier asked before turning around. She could sense the fear in Donasek's eyes and she relished in it. What are you? You are not a devil, so what the hell are you? Donasek asked as he generating a dozen light spears which he threw at Rainier. Rainier simply dodged all of them as she rushed at Donasek, who was backing up towards the door. When she got in front of him, she simply smiled and backhanded the fallen angel into a wall. What am I? We are Leviathan, the indestructible ones, she said approaching the fallen angel, who is on the ground writhing in pain as a result of the strike. Rainier crouched down to eye level before devouring Donasek whole. What is it that you are doing, Rainier? A calm male voice asked, breaking the silence in the church. Rainier turned towards the door where the source of the voice was. The origin of the voice is a young boy with white hair, dressed in priest clothes. The boy is wearing a passive expression on his face as he glanced at Middlet's corpse before glancing at Rainier. Rainier narrowed her eyes at the newcomer, realizing that he isn't human instantly after laying eyes on him. Her eyebrows shot up as she realized who he is. It is Fried Selzen, but she knows that he is so much more than a simple ex-priest. As second, she shouted in a respectful tone at the second in command of the Leviathan hierarchy. Here in front of her is the one who is the head's most trusted lieutenant, and the second most powerful Leviathan in existence. I was just eating some fallen angels. The newcomer raised his eyebrows in response. He walked up to Middlet's corpse, prompting Rainier to do the same. We've been in this world for a very short time and you've already had a run-in with these so-called angels? Fried asked Rainier. The two know each other's new names because of the memories inside each of their new forms. Yes. I wound up underneath a dying boy who was killed by Rainier. I took over the boy's form before killing Rainier and assuming her form. Rainier responded as Fried took a knee to run his hand on Middlet's face. It is fortunate that we met up so quickly after we were expelled, Fried said as he stood back up. Where is everyone else? Where is the head? Rainier asked as Fried glanced around the dark church. I'm not sure. Some were pulled into this world with us, I'm sure of it as I can sense them. The head most definitely held on to Castiel as I can't sense him here. Many of them are still with him by the lack of their presence, Fried said in a troubled voice. The second Leviathan glanced down at Middlet's corpse before looking back at Rainier, staring intently at the fallen angel Leviathan. We do not know much of this world yet. Its laws, mythologies, and hierarchies are inherently different from the one that was in Castiel's mind, Fried said in a calm voice. We need to see what our capabilities are in this world as we wait for instructions from the head, he finished off. I found that our blood is still capable of poisoning lesser species. It also appears that these so-called fallen angels and their light-based weapons are useless against us. Fried nodded his head at this information. You said that you took the form of a boy before becoming Rainier? He then asked. Rainier looked surprised as she turned into Issei. Fried raises his eyebrows at this transformation. His face then dons an inquisitive expression. Do you feel that within your body? Issei nodded at Fried's question. I thought it was just a side effect of becoming this boy, but it is something else. It feels like a foreign presence within this boy. Definitely not human, Issei said as Fried agrees. It's interesting. Powerful, it seems. Try to make contact with that foreign presence, Fried said. Right now? Issei asked. Fried pondered that for a moment before shaking his head. Actually, no. We need to wait for the head to determine if this foreign presence is worth looking into. Issei acknowledges Fried's response as a wise one worthy of the second. So what now? Issei asked, breaking the uncomfortable silence that ensued. Lay low, try to find out more about our capabilities in this world, round up all of us here, and most importantly, understand the mythologies of this world. Fortunate of me to land in a supernaturally aware human form. This lets us become immediately aware that there are threats to us here before we found out the hard way, Fried said, pausing to look back at the corpse at his feet. We should split up for now. We can gather more information this way. I'll be in touch with you in the near future. Fried said, turning around before walking out of the church. Issei stood in the church, a sense of relief overcoming him. Normally a conversation with the second meant certain death, but this one wasn't. More importantly, however, Issei could get back to doing what he loves doing the most. Issei smiled as he stared down at the corpse. Fresh kill that is only a few minutes old. I'll take it. The sound of chewing was heard for a few moments before ending abruptly. Ah. That was good, Issei muttered to himself. He then stared at the empty space in the church. What to do now? He wondered. Back in Purgatory there were always instructions from high-ups, and the only instruction that the second told was just to lay low until the head appears or the second contacts him. It bothered him as to the lack of instruction given to him. Leviathan weren't meant to think for themselves and they always followed the leader for his guidance and wisdom. I guess I will go home then. Issei walked out of the church as well, his hands in his pockets. So human things until contact then? I guess I'll go to school then. His head tilted a little as a smile came on his face. Yes, there are 2 devil's heiresses there. A look of anger replaced the smile on Issei's face. Satans? Leviathan as a name? What a disgrace. I'll show these devils and what this so-called Leviathan about what us Leviathan are truly about. What is going on here? Issei wondered as he stood across the street from his home. There is a police car in front of his house and Issei could clearly see his mother sobbing in the living room through the window. He saw a grim-faced police officer sitting across from his parents, who were holding on to each other. Issei crossed the street, with keys already in his hand. He approached the door, unlocked it, and stepped into his home. Footsteps were heard as Issei took off his shoes. Issei? Issei. You're alive, his mother said to him, rushing to grab him in a crushing hug. See, I told you my son wouldn't die so young, Issei's father proudly proclaimed as he and the detective stood in shock at the sight of Issei. Issei meanwhile had a blank expression on his face as his mother continued to hug. What is this about? Issei asked, thinking about eating everyone in the room for a moment before shaking off the thought. Young man, we received a call about a body found in the park earlier today. It matched your description, but when we arrived, that body was nowhere to be seen. We needed to inform your parents of this, the detective said stoically. Issei mentally processed what was just said. Who else was there? Issei wondered about whoever made the call. Regardless, I am alive. I was not at the park today, Issei lied to the detective. The detective said as he stared Issei up and down for any bruises or noticeable marks. Well, your son is here. I'll be leaving now. The detective excused himself and left the house. Issei's mother still held on to the hug long after the detective left. Mother, please release me, Issei said, getting slightly irritated at the prolonged contact with his mother, who he wanted to eat. Issei, sorry. It's just that we thought we lost you forever, his mother said, after she stopped hysterically crying. Issei tilted his head at this as he thought of what to say next. Okay, I understand. Issei didn't understand human emotions and thought of what to say that would get him out of this situation as fast as possible. I'll be heading to my room now to sleep. With that, Issei ascended up the stairs and stayed in his room until the morning. Issei slammed the alarm clock, causing the alarm to stop ringing. Issei remained awake the entire night, simply lying on his bed with his eyes awake. Leviathan have no need for sleep, and if they did, that would be a death sentence in a place like Purgatory where your life could be taken at any moment. Issei smelled of breakfast coming from the kitchen. Smells good, he thought, rushing out of bed to the dining room. Good morning, son, Issei's father said as Issei took his seat at the table. Issei looked at his father at the other side of the table, drinking coffee as he read the newspaper. Good morning, he responded with a slight scowl. Leviathan don't really have good mornings in Purgatory. Issei's mother came out of the kitchen with food and set the plates down for everyone to eat. Issei stared at it for a moment before deciding to eat it. Bleh, this human food tastes like dead ghoul. Issei thought in disgust as pushed away the sandwich with a frown on his face. Issei got up and pushed in the chair. As he turned to leave for his room, his mother questioned him as to what he will eat for lunch as she made him a bento. I'll just grab a snack sometime during the day. Issei heard the whispers of the students as he made his way to his homeroom. Isn't he dead? Yeah, that's what I heard from her as well. Is he back from the dead? Issei rolled his eyes at these comments. If they annoy him enough, he'll just eat them, discreetly of course as per the second's orders of laying low. The day went by without an interesting event for the most part. The whispers of Issei's resurrection continued among the students, and even some of the staff, throughout the day. The lectures and information given by his teachers bored the Leviathan, who simply thought about this world and humans as food. He did however feel that he was being watched. He could feel the gaze of faraway non-humans that inhabited the schools. He smelled them, their scene a rather pleasant one. With the last bell signaling the end of the day, Issei snapped out of his thoughts, and got up out of his seat to go home. His path to the door was blocked by a horde of girls, each squealing incessantly, and saying things about Kibayuto. Love, I'll never understand it. The Leviathan thought about love and his lack of understanding of it. Emotions are useless in Leviathan and only hinder your survival in that land. Kibayuto entered the room, much to the delight of his fangirls. Issei's eyes met with Kiba's, alarming the Leviathan. He's not human, Issei thought, narrowing his eyes at the so-called Prince of Kuo. He could smell the aura of Kiba and deduced that it wasn't human. It is dark, Issei thought as Kiba approached him. Issei Hayadu? Kiba asked with a smile, offering out his hand. Yes, Issei said slowly, after reluctantly shaking Kiba's hand. President Rias Gremory would like to see you. Gremory? One of the heiresses of Kuo? Should I go? The second said to lay low, but also to understand the mythologies of this world. Still, I might get into a fight with these so-called devils, and I don't think second would be happy about that. Issei pondered his options about going to see this Rias Gremory, before coming to a decision. I'm sorry, but I must decline, Issei said with a smile. Whispers came from the girls at this rejection. A shocked expression came on Kiba's face before returning to normal. I'm sorry, but I must insist that you come with me to meet with her, Kiba said, the smile still on his face, but the tone of his voice clearly more aggressive. Well, I must insist that I don't, Issei said as the whispers continued. You would disappoint President Rias like this? Issei could tell that this Kiba was getting upset at conversation's course. What is she to me? Issei tilted his head as everyone in the room gasped. I do not know her. Why should I meet with her? Issei smiled, thinking of how to get this person more agitated. And so what if I don't meet her? What are you going to do? Beat me up for not meeting your president? Everyone was stunned by the callousness of Issei's words. Issei pushed past the stunned Kiba and the horde of angry students to exit the classroom. The next few days were uneventful for Issei. Go to school, avoid the angry mob of students, sit in class, avoid the angry mob, leave for the day. Issei got up at the ringing of the bell on Friday afternoon, and made his way past the angry mob to reach the gates of Kuo. When he just about reached the gates, he felt 4 non-human presences approach him, 2 from the front and 2 from the back. Kiba and a short, white-haired girl approached him from the front, blocking his path out of the school. Issei turned to see 2 rather attractive girls approach him from behind. With a forced smile, Issei greeted everyone. You must be Rias Gremory, he said as the redhead nodded. I see that you really want to meet with me? Issei sarcastically asked, glancing at the 4 people around him. So, what is it that you want? Issei finished. How did you survive? Rias asked. Issei knew exactly what she was talking about, but decided to play dumb. What on earth do you mean? Do you remember Yuma? You mean Rainier, the fallen angel? Issei asked, stunning the devils at hand. How did you survive your encounter with her? She asked, stunned that he would know the fallen angel's name. Issei smiled, and decided to twist the truth. Let's just say I was given another chance at life. What is all of this to you? And how do you know all of this? It dawned on Issei that she must have known of the foreign presence within him. You are interested in the thing inside of me? Issei questioned. We believe that you were killed because of your sacred gear. Issei nodded at Rias's words. The Leviathan learned what sacred gears from Rainier's memories. Issei has the twice critical as Rainier's memories told him. Yes, my so-called twice critical. Issei stares at Rias's surprised face as a new thought came into his head. I see, it's just so obvious. Me dying and you selflessly reviving me as your servant for my power, using something called an evil piece for something you devils call a peerage, correct? Well, sorry, I am no one's slave, especially someone like you, Issei said with disgust. Rias became befuddled at the explanation of her plan. That's not it at all, she spat out. Issei just threw out a disbelieving look. Really? What do you think I am? I'm just a human, with no way to fight against something like a fallen Angelis. Let me die and then revive me as your slave. Issei smiled at Rias, who was struggling to come back with a retort. You obviously aren't if you managed to survive, so what are you? She asked, salvaging her calm facade. Issei threw a disapproving frown before grinning while shaking his head. He stopped, putting one finger on his chin as he stared at the sky. Isn't that the question? Who got to Issei Hayadu? The angels? The devils? Another third faction? Sorry, Rias, is it alright if I call you that? I don't talk with those who let me get murdered, though I suppose I should thank you as it made the process of getting into him easier. Issei Hayadu. I am Rias Gremory, and I will not be spoken to in such a disrespectful manner. Rias spat this out as Issei simply gave her a patronizing look. Rias was simply astounded at the callousness of his words, but his words did make Rias question her choices about reviving him, especially when it was thrown back in your face with such coldness. Issei smiled, shrugged his shoulders and turned back towards the gate. I see that you are quite gotten to. Well, if you have nothing left to say, I'll be on my way, Issei stated before Kiba and Kaneko blocked his path. You can't just leave, Rias stated from behind him, her confidence a bit shaky after everything that Issei just stated. Issei simply snorted at Rias's words. Oh, you'd think so, right? 2 of your goons blocking my path is such a challenge that only Heracles could overcome, Issei said, rolling his eyes before staring at Kiba and Kaneko. Yes, these 2 can stop me? I know more about you than you think, you devils. You can thank Kiba for that, Issei said, staring straight at Kiba. The Leviathan morphed into Kiba after school a few days, digesting the information of Kiba's mind into his mind. A Nikomata with a traitorous sister, a filthy half-breed, a discarded condom test subject, and an arrogant airhead princess who gets her power from her family name. Sister of Lucifer, give me a break. We knew of Lucifer and he wouldn't present us a challenge, so your name and association is just pathetic to us. We laughed at Lucifer and the angels, and we spit at you. Really, I'd like to see you try and stop me. Issei could tell that everyone was getting angry at his words, so his grin turned ever so larger. I'll even give you the first strike, he said. All signs of levity evaporated out of his voice. Do it, strike at me. Give me a reason to kill all of you. Second will understand that I had to defend myself. Issei waited for the strike to come, staring at the strained expression of Kaneko, the furious expression of Kiba, and the stunned expressions of Akino and Rias. Issei became rather amused at their clenched fists and gritted teeth, but they ultimately did nothing towards him. What's the matter? Issei asked rhetorically. Too scared of attacking me? Don't want to start a war? Commendable of you. Issei's face contorted into a mocking one as he continued. Or is it something else? Is it the fact that I am right? Having the world at the palm of your hand and then telling you it is a joke. The underworld can't save you from the fact that you are just a naive, scared, little girl, ruling a territory given to you by your brother that you don't deserve. You're over your head, Rias Gremory. You are a few years too young to be thinking of attacking me, let alone the rest of us. I'd gladly welcome it though, Issei said, mockingly putting his arms out and closing his eyes. After a few seconds, Issei opened his eyes and spun around to walk out of the gate. Issei made and kept eye contact with Kiba the whole time. Issei was amused at Kiba's absolute rage and murder in his eyes, blowing him a kiss as he passed the devil. See you all on Monday, perhaps with a bigger party. Maybe I'll be scared then. Thanks for meeting with me so quickly, Fried said. Issei glanced at him as stopped walking. There are 11 other Leviathan beside him. HM, 9th, 16th, 22nd, 34th, 41st, 50th, 63rd, 70th, 71st, 89th, 101st. All of them have different forms, some in young and old, male and female. Nice to see you, 31st. 22nd said to Issei, in the form of a businessman in a black suit. These are the ones that I have found by traveling in our true form. I do not believe there are any more on this earth. If there are, then they have hidden themselves from my senses, Fried said, glancing around the park where Issei assumed this boy's form. Fried sighed, looking up at the sky before staring at Issei. Fried walked out from the group, instructing Issei to fall into the group. Issei did as requested as he stared at all of the assembled Leviathan in front of him. I do not know where the head is. I believe that he was one of the few who held on to the angel. Therefore, until he arrives I will be in charge, Fried stated as all of us just nodded our heads. Whenever head isn't giving us directives, the second is in charge. I've been contemplating our course of action for a few days now. 31st, or his current form of Issei, and I are the only ones with supernaturally aware hosts at the moment, he said, pointing at Issei. Issei acknowledged him and walked towards the front of the group. We need to all be supernaturally aware. The wider variety of beings that we can become, the more we will know of this world. As such, finding these hosts will be our top priority. All listened intently as the second continued to speak. Now, this world does hold some similarities to the one of Castiel's. There appear to be angels and monsters here as well. The demons seem to be an entirely different entity than the devils found here, which is something we will need to investigate further. Second's face took on a look of disgust as he continues. There are the rulers of the underworld, which appears to be hell here. And there are 4 rulers, 2 named after demons, 1 after Lucifer, and the last one after us. Several eyebrows were raised at this. Yes, quite irritating that someone is using our name. That will be ratified in due time, of course. He paused for a moment before resuming his speech. You will each receive individual instructions on what form you will take. Afterwards, you are to seek out these forms and assume them as quickly as possible. Keep it quiet in your actions. All failures will be dealt with by me, or Issei. Issei didn't say anything at this, but rejoiced internally at being promoted by the second. Issei is my new second in command. That is all for now. Everyone come forward to receive your instructions. Issei, wait around for further instructions. Fried finished it off as the ninth stepped forward, everyone forming a line behind him. Issei sat down on a bench, just staring at the Leviathan walking away from the area after being given their instructions. As the final Leviathan left, Issei got up and walked towards the second. The second just looked at Issei, contemplating something to say. Well, you now know that you have the authority to bib anyone that gets out of line. If they cause any major trouble, you know what to do, Fried said, glancing at me suspiciously. What have you learned this week? He asked Issei. The devils and co are rather arrogant. I've encountered the Gremry girl and her peerage of devils this week. Weak beings in and of themselves, but we do need to investigate the power of their siblings. The Gremry girl has the current Lucifer, and Citri has our name. Apparently Lucifer is one of the strongest beings in the underworld here. We need to see their abilities to see if they prove to be a thorn in our side. Issei said this before he chuckled. I do believe that I will meet them again on Monday. They attempted to strong-arm me into meeting with them. I met with them, and declared where we stand on them. Fried's eyes narrowed at the last part of the sentence. Did you tell them of us? He asked in a slow voice. Of course not. I never mentioned us. I just told them vague rumors, and they don't know any of our abilities, Issei quickly explained to Fried. Fried seemed satisfied at this. Good. We are still trying to establish ourselves here. Disrupting the natural order of this world may not be the best long-term strategy for us. As much as I would like to kill all of them right now, we can't make too much noise this earlier on, Fried said in disgust. I agree. That being said, these devils are intrusive and are not liking to leave me in peace, especially given what I said. What are the rules of engagement when dealing with noble devils? Issei said, sarcastically saying the word noble. Fried frowned for a moment. The same as always. Lay low and don't start fights, Fried said as his face lit up. On the other hand, they should know that we can't be killed and that we will take over. This will make it easier to gain pawns for when we start the takeover of this world. Yes, this is good. He muttered to himself as Issei just listened. If you start a fight, tell them just enough about us just to keep them guessing and to fear our name. You can't kill them though, you can only incapacitate them, Fried said as Issei nodded. Also, what about my sacred gear? That is the supposed foreign presence inside of me. Should I try to use it? Fried nodded at Issei's question. Yes, they see that and fear us even more, Fried said, turning away from Issei, signaling that the conversation is over. He walked a few steps, before pausing and turning back to Issei. Do not fail me. You know what will happen if you do. Issei just gulped at Fried's words. Deploying a sacred gear? Letting the power flow out of you all at once. Force it out of you. Issei thought of what he saw in Rainer's memories, sighing as he got ready to deploy his sacred gear. Most powerful thing I can imagine? The Leviathan smiled a bit, thinking back to God pulling all of the Leviathan into purgatory all at once. That was the most power that he has ever experienced. Issei focused, expelling all the tension in his body at once. He noticed a gauntlet form on his left arm. Issei frowned, sensing the being in the gauntlet immediately, and not liking the aura, being sealed in the twice critical. Who are you? The jewel in the gauntlet shone brightly at Issei's words. Twice critical? Who are you calling a twice critical? I am calling you what I believe you are. If not a twice critical, what are you? I am Drake, and this is the boosted gear. Issei became surprised at this. One of the Longinus level sacred gears. The one with the power to double the user's power once every 10 seconds. What are you? I do not recognize your aura, Drake asked Issei in a cautious voice. I am not of your world. I just fell into this boy by chance. What are you then? Your aura, so dark, so evil. It is like a pit of eternal darkness. Issei chuckled at this. We go by many names. The first beasts, the firstborn, the old ones. It is interesting, because we share the name of Leviathan with one of the underworld's leaders. That will change shortly though. Leviathan of another world? That is interesting. You shall be a powerful host. Issei snorted at this. Obviously. Now, how exactly do you work? You double your strength every 10 seconds until your body cannot handle it anymore. Though that shouldn't be a problem for you. Let's test this out then. Very well. Boost. Issei felt a surge of power. He stared down at his arm, noticing the black veins popping out. I like this, Issei said euphorically. You can get more forms, but I'm not sure you can get more because you can't get stronger. You don't have any life form to draw from. Yeah, whatever, nice to know. Hit me up with another shot. Boost! Issei screamed out, clenching his fists tightly as another surge of power hit the Leviathan. He exhaled loudly before laughing. This is great. Again. Boost! Oh yeah! Issei flexed, letting the power flow from him. Alright, dragon, I think you and I are going to get along just fine, Issei said, cracking his neck. Issei Hayadu? Issei picked his head up off the desk as the bell rung, signaling the end of classes on Monday. Yes. Issei saw that it is one of the devils from the Citri peerage, the vice president of the student council, if he isn't mistaken, and he usually isn't. Issei then glanced at the other girl, Sona Citri, the other heiress of Ko, in the flesh. Issei's eyebrows rose as a result. Oh, they called for backup? This should be interesting, Issei thought, grinning outwardly. He stared at his left arm, and then back at the three devils. Your presence is requested at the student council office, Sona said, her tone indicating a demand rather than a request. Issei simply nodded with a giant smile on his face and rose from his desk. Issei smirked as he was led out of classroom, with Genshiro Saji leading the way and Sona and Tsubaki following behind him, probably to stop me should I try to run. Don't worry, you devils, I'll be able to play with you today, Issei thought as the group stopped in front of the student council's door. The door opened, letting Issei see that Rias and her peerage were already there. Issei just calmly walked in, sensing the auras of all the devils in the room. Thanks for the bigger welcoming party, Rias. Still not scared though, Issei remarked, standing by a chair. Sona and Tsubaki sat down next to Rias and Akino on the other side of the wooden table. Please take a seat, Sona said, gesturing to the lone chair in front of the table opposite of the four devils. I'm flattered, thanks, but I don't think it will be necessary. But thank you nonetheless, Issei said in a sarcastic tone of voice as he took the seat. I'll get right to it then. Rias told me what happened on Friday. It is absolutely inappropriate for you to talk to a heiress of the 72 pillars like that in accordance with devil etiquette and courtesy. Bwahahahaha. Issei laughed hysterically as Sona stopped her sentence, shocked at the blatant interruption. Hey! Listen to the president, and don't interrupt, Saji yelled out in anger. I'm sorry for being terribly rude, I just find it hilarious, Issei said mockingly, trying to stop his laughter. It's just that you start off like this. Isn't that a pretty shitty way to start the conversation? And who the hell are you to impose your devil's culture on me? I'm not one of you, Issei continued as Sona looks unimpressed. Regardless, you are in our territory and will abide by our rules, Sona said as Issei glanced at Rias, who has a smug expression on her face and her arms crossed across her chest. Issei tilted his head and put up a questioning look. He then rose from his seat and put on a condescending smile. Yes, your territory, Issei said while putting up quotation marks with his fingers. Who gave it to you? Congratulations, some devils who we don't respect have arbitrarily given you a stake of territory that they had no right to dole out. Why should I tolerate your petty laws and your unentitled, nauseating arrogance, you bunch of worthless sacks of meat? What is to stop me from killing all of you right now and being on my merry way? Issei said, each word having more disdain than the last. Issei had a small smile as two blades were put to his neck and three fists lined up at his lazily looked around, seeing Kaneko and two members from Sona's peerage in a fighting position, ready to jump at him at a command. He then looked back at Sona and Rias, who have haughty expressions on their faces at this. Is that a threat, Mr. Hayadu? Sona asked with an icy tone of voice. Issei rose his eyebrows for a split second before moving a blade away from his neck, only to have it return to its previous position a second later. No, it is a promise. If we can't get rid of all devils before a year, we've failed and lost our touch, Issei said, his hands in his pockets. He sighed as he turned around, careful not to get cut by either blade. Now I wonder, you are former humans, most of you anyways, Issei said, glancing down at Kaneko. Now you aren't, but you aren't demons either. I wonder if this will work on you devils since you are pretty much cut from the same cloth as those pieces of shit. Exorcism is T. Omnis immundus spiritus, Issei said as the devils clutched their heads in pain. Issei smiled before continuing. Omnis satanica potestas, omnis incursio infernalis adversarii, omnis congregatio et secta diabolica. Ergo, Draco maledict. Ecclesiam tuum securi tibi facius libertate servire, T. ragamus, audi nos. By this time, several of the devils have collapsed to the ground in pain. Issei looks surprised as Sona, Rias, Tsubaki, and Akino remain on their feet. What the hell was that? Rias asked furiously, as she held her head in annoyance. Exorcism, you can thank the angel for that. I suppose that wouldn't work on you anyways, given that you are supposedly pure devils, though don't take that as a compliment. You are just a shinier piece of shit, Issei said as Rias glanced at Sona, who nodded back at her. Akino sent a lightning bolt at Issei, who just smiled. When the projectile hit him and caused the room to be covered in black smoke, all that was heard was a laugh. The four standing devils looked in shock as Issei just glanced down at the floor. Now, did you really think that would work? Rias, why don't you use that feigned power of destruction on me? It won't work, but I'd like to see it for shits and giggles. Rias hesitated at Issei's taunt, allowing him enough time to pick up a chair, and hurling it at Rias. Rias ducked at outcoming projectile and responded with her power of destruction. The feigned bale power destroyed the chair, as well as parts of Issei's face and body. Now, that was actually good. I commend you for that, Issei said as his mouth and left arm regenerated. He smirked as he leapt onto the desk and threw a punch at Rias in air. He hit Rias square in the face, sending her flying into the wall as Sona hit him with a water spear from the side. Damn, that's cold, Issei remarked as he was hit with a lightning bolt. Ahahaha. Tingly. Issei twisted his head back and rushed at Akino, who couldn't react to Issei's sheer speed. She was grabbed and tossed towards a bookcase on the other side of the room. Issei twirled around to see Tsubaki slash at him with her naginata. She managed to cause a large gash on his chest, which surprised Issei. You bitch, Issei said, dragging his hand on his wound before looking at the black blood on his hand. He licked some blood off his fingers and then stared at the two remaining devils. You made me bleed my own blood. No one makes me bleed my own blood, Issei cried, charging at Tsubaki. Tsubaki remained calm as Sona continued firing water spears at him from behind her. Issei's fist neared Tsubaki as a mirror appeared in front of her. The mirror shattered as Issei was thrown across the room, skidding across the floor on his back. Again. I want to ride again, Issei maniacally laughed as he got back to his feet. He advanced back at the student council president and vice president before he was stopped from moving due to a line on his arm. Issei jerked his arm to escape, but to no avail. He looked in shock to see Saji deploy his absorption line sacred gear on his left arm, while still on the ground. Issei's look of shock turned into one of laughter, as he felt what the sacred gear was trying to do to him. Ha 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 ha. You think you can absorb life from me? We are above life and death, there is nothing to absorb, Issei said, immediately sprinting at Saji, much to the pawn's surprise. He soccer kicked the pawn in the face, causing him to fly back. Issei followed him, settling on top of him to punch him. This is for thinking that toy can work on me, Issei said, each word preceding an ever harder punch to the face. Saji, Tsubaki and Sona both cried out. They launched magical attacks at Issei, who is still hitting the now unconscious Saji. That apparently angered Issei, who slowly got up off Saji's prone body. Now look here, sugar, I was planning on letting you off easy. But since you both seem so eager to be near death today, Issei said, pointing a finger on his left hand at the two girls. He wagged his finger at the two girls as he transformed into Kiba, causing their eyes to widen substantially. Quite amazing, I admit. The ability to generate swords is actually interesting. He might have what the big man calls the spark. But enough of that. The Leviathan charged at the two stunned girls, catching them off guard at his speed. He hit Tsubaki in the head with the flat part of the sword, knocking her unconscious. He then spun around, narrowly dodging a water sword aimed at his head, plunging the sword into Sona's stomach. The heiress fell to her knees, one of her hands on her wound, which is gushing out blood. She looked at the Leviathan in disgust. Oh, don't be so dramatic, the Leviathan said as he morphed back into Issei. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead and in my stomach by now, Issei said, leaning in to run his right hand across Sona's face. Sona jumped back in disgust, to which Issei just smiled. The boss has plans for you devils. Issei stood back up and placed his hands back into his pockets. Let your horse sister know that we are going to reclaim our name, when you wake up of course. Issei reeled his left leg back and then kicked Sona hard in the face, causing her to be knocked out. Issei laughed as he walked out of the room, but not before getting one last barb out. Nice meeting, very productive, I must say. They know of us now, Issei said to Fried, who is staring at the corpse on the ground. Fried turned a lazy eye to Issei, and then turned his gaze back on the corpse. Yes, I've heard. Word travels through the grapevine, Fried remarked simply. So what now? Issei asked, waiting for further orders from his superior. You can't go back now after this. Doesn't matter anyways though. Your new task is to find and neutralize 2 exorcists sent by the church, Fried remarked. They sent to retrieve Excalibur fragments? Issei asked. The Leviathan in him knew about the theft of the fragments, as that was the biggest piece of news in the supernatural world in years. Possibly and very highly likely. Kokabeel, that warmonger not making things easy for us? Fried asked. Issei tilted his head at this. What do you mean? Issei asked, honestly not understanding Fried's words. If Kokabeel succeeds in whatever he is planning, whatever it may be, the end result is a war. That would normally be good for us, you know, letting the supernatural thin themselves out. This just won't work though. Humans will be caught in the crossfire, and that takes away from our limited food supply. If there is a war, it will be started and guided by us. My guess is that he is planning on killing those two heiresses and framing the church for this, starting another great war. Issei's eyes widened at Fried's explanation. It makes so much sense now, Issei thought as he just stared at the corpse. Who's the stiff? Issei asked. Valpergaliai. Issei just nodded. Okiba, you would have enjoyed this. If that is Kokabeel's plan though, isn't it significantly altered now, given the increased security around the two heiresses after what I've done? Yes, but that probably won't matter. Give these factions a reason to kill each other, and they'd be happy to pull the trigger, Fried said, receiving a nod from Issei. Now these two exorcists from the church. What do you want me to do about them? Fried put his hand to his chin at this, not giving a thought as to their fates. They're probably black ops by the church. Church won't acknowledge their deaths as it would be a blemish and mark against them for failing. The next words out of Fried's mouth were music to Issei's ears. Do as you see fit. It was way too easy. Issei just shook his head at how simple it was to find them. Two cloaked people in the middle of the day in Japan didn't exactly blend in with the crowd. Keep it quiet, he says. Issei sighed, mimicking his boss's words. Not exactly easy though. It'd be a lot simpler to just kill everyone and get it over with. But no. How to lure them away from here? Issei remarked of the shopping district that he followed the two to. Damn, I hate going in that guy's form, but it does seem to be the easiest way to get them away from this area, Issei said, wishing that he had erased all traces of Fried's DNA from all of his possessions. He said I might come in handy, but still. Issei did a double check to make sure that no one could see him in this alleyway. Issei morphed into Fried, complete with his clothes and weapons. Fried then jumped out of the alleyway, and attracted the attention of the two exorcists. Well, here goes nothing, he thought as he screamed out obscenities at the two exorcists. Yo bitches! You looking for me? The Leviathan taunted, causing the two exorcists to turn around and be on guard. Yo! It's just me, your local friendly excommunicated priest from the church. Sel Zen, they shouted in unison. My, I have fangirls. How wonderful that makes me feel. The church sent me two more worthless exorcists to play with. Maybe, the Leviathan said, licking his lips. We should go to a place that is more private. The Leviathan said this while turning around, sprinting in the other direction. The Leviathan stood in front of the fountain in the park, smirking at the two exorcists who have their swords out. It really was too easy. But glad that is over, the Leviathan said as his form morphed back into Issei's, out of Schizo and into Bresto. I really need new forms. Issei sighed as he stared at the two exorcists in shock. Devil, are you not? The blue-haired exorcist said, brandishing her sword at Issei. Don't lump me in with those pieces of crap, Issei said as he stared at the two. Zenobia Korda, Irina Shidu, I've read up about you, pleased to make your acquaintance. I'm Issei Hayadu, and I'll be your killer tonight, Issei said in a condescendingly polite voice. Hayadu? Issei Hayadu. Do you remember me? Irina shouted at the confused Hayadu. No, should I? The Leviathan searched through Issei's memories and found nothing on Irina. Wait, I thought you were a boy. Issei shrugged his shoulders. I was a bit boyish, Irina admitted and laughed nervously. You interfere with a mission from the church, Zenobia stated, more in the tone of a threat than just a statement. What can I say? The boss gave me the short end of the stick, Issei remarked. Still, meeting a childhood friend as an exorcist? These things happen, not just in anime apparently, Issei said this, while staring at Irina. Sorry sweetheart, the Issei you knew is long gone. Now I'm the new and improved Issei. Issei said this as he wagged his fingers at the exorcists. But I'm a sinner. I admit, I'm a terrible murderer, killer, blasphemer, and sinner. I'm not a devil, you know, I'm far worse. He said this in the most serious of voices. So, try and give me your church's judgment, you worthless Christian whores. Issei didn't need to say another word as Zenobia lunged at him with her sword. Issei just dodged the slash and tried to punch her in the face, but he missed. Phew. That was close. Excalibur destruction, is it not? Issei remarked as Zenobia simply ignored him. Silence, heretic, Zenobia yelled as she slashed at him again. Yes, yes. I am a heretic, a man against God. Try to slash me down. Issei dodged the sword slash from Zenobia, only to be met by Irina's sword trying to stab him. Oh, my childhood friend is trying to kill me, Issei taunted, jumping out of the way of her strikes. Don't worry, Issei. I'll pray for you to get to heaven. You can still repent, Irina shouted. Issei simply dodged the strikes from both of Zenobia and Irina, much to the former's ire. We don't go to heaven. It's complicated, shall I say, Issei said, as he saw Zenobia swing her blade. Issei dodged, but when Zenobia suddenly changed her trajectory, the sword slashed Issei's head, causing a giant gash on his face. Such destructive power that sword has, Issei said, running his hands over the gash on his face. The two exorcists looked in surprise as the gaze healed in front of their eyes. Black blood? Irina said. What are you? Zenobia questioned. You know, I guess I am done playing with my food now, Issei said viciously, charging at the two exorcists. Issei ducked underneath a slash from Irina, and punched her in the stomach, sending her flying into a tree. This allowed Zenobia an opening, which she used to try and decapitate the Leviathan. Issei was so preoccupied with Irina that he was caught off guard by this. Issei managed to raise his right arm to block the strike. The arm came clean off as Issei jumped back. Black blood gushed out from the wound as Issei looked at the right side of his body, minus an arm. That tickles, Issei said, grabbing his arm and sticking it back into the socket. Zenobia and Irina could only stare in awe as black goo sealed up the wound and held the arm back into place. Issei then moved his arm in a circle. There you go, good as new, Issei said, charging at Irina. She slashed at Issei, but Issei ducked underneath, and saw the perfect opening. He crouched down and then sprung up with an uppercut to the stomach. He lodged his fist in Irina's body, causing her to spit out blood onto Issei's face. Issei grinned as he opened his jaws and shoved Irina down his throat in one piece. That tasted like arrogant righteousness, Issei remarked disgustedly as he stared at the one remaining exorcist. No, Irina, Irina. Zenobia screamed, slashing at Issei wildly now. Guess I've done it now, Issei said, groaning at the amount of slashes and stabs that he kept taking. He saw that Zenobia was getting sloppy and managed to backhand her, causing her to go flying. She cartwheeled, landing on her feet. She stared at Issei with a look of pure rage on her face. Die, die, die. I'll kill you, she screamed maniacally. Issei just shook his head, and continued to dodge the wide swinging Excalibur. You know, what are you without this toy? Issei asked, in the middle of sidestepping a downward slash attempt. He grabbed Zenovia's arm, twisting it violently. Arg, she yelped, jumping back from the grinning Leviathan. Might be broken, but what do I know? I'm not a doctor, Issei remarked, as Zenobia tried to grasp the sword with both her hands, only to fail. Two-handed sword, is it not? Still, I like your spirit. Let me see a little more of it before I kill you, Issei joked as Zenobia tried to steady her Excalibur with her functioning hand. Issei charged at her with frightening speed. Zenobia gasped and struggled, but summoned the strength for one more upward slash attempt. Issei dodged that by sidestepping and then grabbed her arm and wrenched it out of its socket, throwing the arm and the sword to the ground. You know, I hope you taste better than my childhood friend, he grinned, grabbing Zenobia by the throat and shoving her into his jaws. He chewed for a few seconds before burping. I probably should have prayed before eating. Oh well. Issei lazily walked back to the staging area, extremely happy with his most recent. His thoughts drifted as he went back into the warehouse. An unfamiliar figure stood there, but Issei could tell that it is a Leviathan. 63rd, Issei greeted. The figure turned around. It is an attractive blonde-haired woman dressed as a shrine maiden. 31st, we meet again, the woman smiled. Who's the suit? Leader of the yokai in Kyoto. A nine-tailed fox bitch by the name of Yasaka. Issei raised his eyebrows like he was thinking of something. How was that? Rather annoying. She put up quite a fight. Tasted awesome though, the 63rd Leviathan admitted with a laugh. Issei chuckled in response. 31st, 63rd. Glad to see you here early, a new voice said. Issei and Yasaka turned to the new voice. Its owner was a tall, pale man with piercing red eyes and unkempt black hair. Second, Issei and Yasaka responded in unison. Indeed. I got rid of this Kokobile nonsense. Second in the form of Kokobile spat out disgustedly. I have news to share which will expedite our goals tremendously. Glad to see everyone here and in their new forms. Kokobile chuckled. A collection of the supernatural is truly represented here, he continued as he looked towards the rightmost person in the line of Leviathan in front of him. Loki, Ares, Hera, Indra, Quetzalcoatl, Yasaka, Tsukuyomi, Guan Yu, Dracula, Shalba Beelzebub, and Penemu. And of course, yours truly. Kokabeel chuckled as he pointed at himself. I'm here too, but I don't have a cool form. Issei shrugged his shoulders. Be that as it may, you are still one of the most powerful of us here, Kokabeel remarked. Now I am happy to see you have acquired your forms without any major complications. I was going to state my original plans to you now, but with the knowledge in this fallen's head, I thought of a better plan. Everyone except Penemu looked at Second blankly. Penemu nodded. The tablets? She asked. Indeed. It appears that high-ranking fallen angels have knowledge about certain tablets written by God. Everyone except the two pretend fallen angels gasped in shock. Now these God tablets are very powerful. He's seen them, Kokabeel said, referring to the actually Kokabeel. Rumor has it, these tablets control the fate of the various realms and supernatural beings. We find these, we gather a wealth of information about everyone and everything that could possibly be in opposition to us. Kokabeel finished as Penemu spoke up. But don't we need a prophet to translate the tablets? And where do we find the tablets? Penemu asked. I was just about to get to that, Penemu. That is our next task. You all will scour the globe for the tablets, Kokabeel said, making a sweeping gesture at the Leviathans in front of him. Issei. You have a special task. Issei raised his eyebrows at Kokabeel's words. You and I are going to go prophet hunting. Prophet? The same as in Castiel's world? Issei asked, honestly not knowing the answer due to him not having the knowledge of a high-level fallen angel. Kokabeel and Penemu chuckled at this. Surprisingly, yes, it is the same one, Kokabeel said, pacing around and making gestures with his hands. It's quite funny, actually. There are billions of possibilities in both worlds, and yet fate has chosen you. God must really hate you, Kevin Tran. That's him, Issei said, though in more of a question than a statement. Indeed, ordinary high school student. This shouldn't be too difficult. Should we do this at this moment, though? The prophet is useless without activation of the prophecy. Issei questioned a second, now back in the form of the deranged priest, nodded. It will come in due time. The sooner the better, obviously, and this is a safety measure, in case the devils or angels try to reach him. Fried had a bittersweet smile as he felt 4 new presences appear in the vicinity. Well, not devil or angels. Humans? Special ones, interesting powers. This should be interesting, Fried said as the 4 presences in the form of teenagers approached the distracted prophet, who is on his phone. Kevin Tran? The sole Asian male in the group asked. Fried and Issei noticed the boy speaking in Mandarin to Kevin Tran, who looked up from his phone. Yes, who are you? The 2 Leviathan understood the language as English, but the Mandarin-speaking boy just nodded. Translation spell? Issei asked. More than likely. Magicians, interesting. I wonder if these magicians are like the Winchesters in the other world, Fried said as they looked on. My name is Chow Chow, and we are the hero faction. The leader, now identified as Chow Chow, said as a matter of fact. Kevin Tran just looked over the group in front of him. A boy in a uniform typical of the Japanese manga he reads, a little boy, a boy in a magician robe, and a giant. Kevin Tran said nothing, walking past the group. Hey, the giant of the group called out as he grabbed Kevin. Wah! Let go of me, Kevin said, struggling to get out of the giant's grip, to no avail. You see, you have a special gift that can help us. That is why we need you, Chow Chow said in a calm, almost patronizing tone. You have the wrong person. I don't have any gift. You're all crazy, Kevin said, kicking and flailing around as the giant of the group lifted him up. Should we intervene? Issei asked. I do believe so, Fried said, as the 2 got out from their stolen car and approached the group. You have the power to help us change the world, to save humanity. A frown appeared on Chow Chow's face as he turned to see the 2 approaching Leviathan. What is this? Some type of manga? Am I dreaming? Chow Chow chuckled at Kevin's words. No, I assure you that this is quite real. Chow Chow narrowed his eyes at the 2 Leviathan, who stopped a few feet from the group. What are you? Chow Chow asked, his eyes still narrowed at the 2 Leviathan. Funny, I thought I'd ask you the same thing. I thought heaven would be falling now to save the prophet. Funny how you humans got to him first, Fried said. Hunters? He finished with a tilt of his head, a questioning look on his face. No, we aren't hunters, whatever those are. We are heroes, here to claim the prophet. You, whatever you are clearly dangerous. Your aura's so dark, so vicious. It's oozing off you. Too dangerous to live. Chow Chow materialized his sacred gear, the true Longinus, and pointed it at Fried, who simply rose an eyebrow. Ah, that's what that was. The spear that killed Jesus Christ. The greatest Longinus, the true Longinus, in existence. Fried finished as Chow Chow stared him down for a few moments. Well, go on with it. I want to see how that can do against us. It won't kill me, I just want to see if I am stronger than a god here. Fried mocked as Chow Chow frowned. Was he really questioning the power of the true Longinus? Extend! The spear grew a bright white as a blade of energy shot out from its tip. Fried stood still as the blade of energy hit him, causing a massive explosion. Issei looked to his side, a puddle of black ooze where Fried stood. Issei then looked at a smirking Chow Chow before sporting a smirk of his own. Issei saw the ooze massing together, before taking the human form before taking the form of Fried. Chow Chow's group stared wide-eyed as they watched the black mass stand up before taking the face of the person who was just hit directly by the blade of energy. Chow Chow himself was extremely surprised, but managed to hide his emotion behind a stoic face. Fried cracked his neck and gave a slow clap to the wielder of the true Longinus. Wow, that was actually really powerful. Too bad that won't work on us. Cool party trick though, Fried said as he advanced towards the group. Issei followed behind him, thinking of how he would eat each person, minus the prophet, who fainted at the display of regeneration. The giant flung the fainted prophet to the side and launched a punch at Fried. Fried simply grabbed the fist and flung the giant to the side. George, send the prophet out of here. Leonardo, go with him, Chow Chow said before they nodded. All right, you'll pay for that, the giant screamed, angry at being tossed aside so easily. A glowing aura appeared around the giant. Yes, giant. I'm afraid that I don't have time to deal with the likes of you at this moment. Issei, if you will, Fried nonchalantly said as Chow Chow stabbed him with the true Longinus. Fried simply grinned and punched Chow Chow in the face, sending him back. Fried pulled the true Longinus out of his body and hurled at Chow Chow. Chow Chow rolled out of the way and the spear lodged itself harmless into the ground a few feet away from him. Meanwhile, Issei dodged the punches of the giant and started to taunt him. What's wrong, giant? Too slow, or are you just human? Issei mocked as the giant became angrier. I am Heracles, and I will kill you, Heracles screamed out as the aura started to flicker. Issei stared as various growths sprouted out from Heracles' body before flying out at him. Issei was thrown back by the growths which exploded on contact with him. Wow, that was fun, Issei roared out as he stood back up, sporting a vicious grin. I can't wait to have that power. Issei charged at Heracles, who threw a combination of punches at the charging Leviathan. Issei grabbed the fist, and held on as an explosion sent dust and debris flying everywhere. Issei, still holding on, yanked the fist, dragging Heracles right into the Leviathan's jaws. Heracles screamed as Issei devoured the hero in 2 bites. Issei noticed Chow Chow staring intently at him. Interesting. Superhuman pain tolerance, expanding jaws, super strength and speed, Chow Chow said as a matter of fact as Issei rejoined Fried's side. Ah, you're too kind. Still, we have many more tricks up our sleeve, Fried said as he morphed into Chow Chow, much to the real Chow Chow's shock. Descendant of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms hero, leader of a group of anti-supernatural humans. You have what the boss calls the spark still. It's a shame to kill someone so competent. If only you were on our side. The Leviathan morphed back into Fried as he finished. A small green magical circle appeared next to Chow Chow. The 2 Leviathan understood the runes in the circle as Enochian magic. A bright light came out from the circle, and when the light dissipated, George and Leonardo became visible. Chow Chow stared at his 2 new comrades for a moment before glancing back at the Leviathan with a disappointed look on his face. We need to retreat. Tactically, Chow Chow said. The 2 Leviathan noticed numerous shadows originating from Leonardo as a magic circle formed under the 3 humans. The shadows came out of the ground, each in the form of an animal. Hundreds of them, many of them bears or lions, though some serpents and tigers were seen. Annihilation Maker, the power of your Leonardo. Quite useful. I wonder if we can replicate that, Fried mentioned as a dim blue light enveloped the humans. We will continue this at another time, Chow Chow stated before he disappeared. Humans. They may prove to be quite the thorn in our side if the prophecy is activated and they find a tablet on us, Fried said as Issei charged at the closest shadow monster, which was an serpent. Issei grabbed the nearest serpent, swung it around like a whip, hitting several other monsters and knocking them back. Fried grinned as he ran straight into the horde of monsters, using his light sword and exorcist sword to kill the monsters. This is tiresome, Issei said, after throwing his serpent at other monsters. The monsters that he hit simply stood back up and advanced towards him. He was bitten in the arm by a lion, and simply grunted in annoyance as he shook off the lion and pushed it back. I agree. These monsters are almost as resilient as us, Fried said as he slashed at the head of a bear before turning around to shoot a tiger in the mouth. Magic time? Issei asked as he jumped back from the crowd of monsters. Yes, back up, Fried said, turning into Kokabeel as Issei put as much distance between him and the monsters as he could. Kokabeel took to the sky with his wings and generated a light spear the size of Ko Academy which he hurled at the monsters below. A tremendous flash of light and then a cloud of smoke blinded the Leviathan temporarily before being dissipated. That worked, Issei simply remarked as he noticed the shadow monsters fading into oblivion. Yes, Kokabeel said, landing back on the ground as he morphed back into Fried. What do we do now? Issei asked. Simple, continue gathering the tablets. Without the tablets, the prophet is useless. Those humans will show up eventually, it's inevitable, Fried said, frowning as he turned to a nearby tree. You can come out now, he shouted. A few moments passed before a little girl came out from behind the tree. How'd you get through the barrier that those humans set up? Issei asked as the girl glanced from Issei to Fried, and then back to Issei with her empty eyes. I need you. Issei blinked several times at this little girl, dressed in Lolita fashion, before turning to Fried. Fried has a serious expression on his face. And you are? Fried asked. Ophis, my name is Ophis. The two Leviathans' eyes opened up at this name. So, you're the so-called dragon god of this world. Fried spat out, mockingly saying dragon god, much to Ophis's visible annoyance. A god from a whore, who would have known? Issei chuckled. You are powerful. I need your help. Fried chuckled at Ophis's words. And how can we help you? He humored her. Help me, defeat Great Red. The other heavenly dragon. Why? Fried asked, nodding at the name Great Red. He took my home from me, Ophis said. Okay, just kill it then, Issei stated. Ophis lazily glanced at him, and then back at Fried. Not that simple. Need help, Ophis said as Fried started to laugh. So that's what that was. Your little brigade of chaos, I should have known. Fried laughed before continuing. Kokabeel heard things through the grapevine about your little group. Supporting power-hungry, idiotic groups, while hilarious, is directly opposing our goals for the humans. Fried tilted his head at Ophis. Stay out of our way, Ophis. We'll deal with your little group in due time. Fried turned around. And we'll deal with the rest of you dragons in due time. How is the tablet search going? Fried asked to the nearest Leviathan in the 13th floor of the Belial Hotel and Resort, which has been rented out and converted into the headquarters of the Leviathan. It's going well, we've found. Guan Yu, now dressed in a black business suit, stated before squinting his eyes at Issei and Fried. Where is the prophet? He inquired. We've ran into some speed bumps. We will reacquire him shortly. Fried's tone indicated that the conversation was over, something that Guan Yu noticed and understood. As I was saying, we managed to find and acquire 2 tablets so far. We do believe that we have a line for a third, Guan Yu said as another voice interrupted the conversation. Indeed, just located it, an arrogant, feminine voice stated. The 3 Leviathan looked at the source of the voice, the Greek goddess Hera, or at least the Leviathan that possessed her. It's really amazing, just showing a bit of skin will do. Filthy devils. Hera shuddered at this. So, where is it? Hera smiled at Fried's words. She turned to Issei, who bore a confused expression on his face. It is in the Gremery family estate, which coincidentally is hosting an engagement party tonight. Fried started laughing at this. Oh my, he said, once he returned back to normal. This is wonderful. I do believe we should give them some engagement presents, don't you agree? Fried finished as a maniacal look appeared on Issei's face. I couldn't agree more. And done? Penemu, a gorgeous brunette female fallen angel dressed in a simple black dress with her 10 black wings out, said as she hovered in the air. The sigil that she has been observing has finally been completed, the final part being drawn in by Guan Yu at the northwestern part of the vast Gremery estate. Just one more part, she muttered as she materialized a giant light spear in her right hand. She grabbed onto the spear, and used it to cut her wrist, getting some of her black Leviathan blood onto the spear. She examined the blood-covered spear as the wound healed up before hurling the spear at the sigil. Continent omnibus entibus tecum noct, she said as the spear made contact with the sigil. The sigil became an eerie green before reverted, disappearing from view as a pulse of magical energy erupted from barrier that was now in place. With ease, she flew back down to the staging area inside the forest immediately outside of the Gremery estate. In a clearing in the forest, there stood about a dozen figures. Each one was extremely beautiful and dressed in the finest fashions. If one glanced at the group quickly, they would think them to be models ready for a photo shoot or something like that. But no, these are Leviathan, about to send a message to the devils. You 3 will be posted here, here, and here, Fried said, using a stick to draw in the dirt the positions that Tsukuyami, Indra, and Yasaka are to take outside of the Gremery estate. Tsukuyami is to take the back entrance of the estate, Ares the western entrance, and Yasaka the eastern entrance. A remarkably well drawn out map was in the dirt for everyone to see. There was the sigil, and then the estate itself, with its many buildings on the grounds. Tsukuyami and Yasaka audibly grumbled at their being posted outside of the action. Freed narrowed his eyes at his subordinate's discontent. Is there a problem with this? Freed asked in an icily calm voice, eliciting fear from the rest of the Leviathan. No. None. I'm fine. Good. It is for a reason that I posted you in your respective locations, Freed said as he noticed Penemu returning. Ah, perfect timing. Penemu, you will be with Loki on flight detail outside of the sigil. It is your job to maintain the strength of the sigil and to prevent it from being damaged or altered in any way. Fine. You got it, were Penemu and Loki's responses to Freed's placement of them. Everyone else will be part of the main strike team. The team will be split into 2 strike groups, one led by myself and the other led by Issei. Freed gestured to Issei, who simply nodded. The team led by me will search for the tablet, while the other team will attack the ballroom, where a majority of the devils will be, Freed said as several Leviathan wore huge grins on their faces. Good time to kill all the devils there. Hera licked her lips after saying these words. Sorry to break your dreams, but you're with me, Hera, as are Quetzalcoatl and Shalba, Freed said as Hera sighed. So Ares, Guan Yu, and Dracula are with me then? Issei asked Freed. The latter responded with a nod. Well, if there are no further questions, let's move out, Freed said. Our guests are waiting. The attack group teleported in front of the estate, surprising the guards posted out front. The guards were quickly killed by the Leviathan, who grabbed them and swallowed them up whole. Tsukuyami, Indra, and Yasaka had already teleported to their respective posts. After opening the grand doors, the group split into 2. Well, have fun and kill as many as possible, Freed simply stated before his group headed up the nearby stairs. Oh, don't worry, we will. Issei and his group laughed. Is this it? Guan Yu asked, wielding his Guan Dao in his left hand. The group had stopped in front of a massive set of doors and the sound of music and voices were heard behind it. Probably. I can smell the filth and arrogance just oozing out, Issei said as he was about to punch the door wide open, but stopped with his fist just an inch from the door. This will be hilarious, Issei said as he morphed into Rias Gremry. I can't wait to see the looks on their faces, Leviathan Rias stated as she punched the door, sending the door flying into the ballroom. I'm sorry that I'm late for my own wedding, she yelled out as she entered the extravagantly decorated room. The other Leviathan soon entered the room as Leviathan Rias surveyed everything. Easily over 100 devils here. The food looks wonderful, she said as she saw the person that she was most eager to see. Ah, Rias, there I am, she gigged as the real Rias looked in shock. What the hell? 2 Rias? Why the hell is Ares and Guan Yu? Some from the audience muttered. Why? Riser Phoenix said, glancing at the Rio Rias who was right next to him, and the Leviathan Rias, before glancing back at the Rio Rias. Who the hell are you? Riser and Rio Rias shouted in unison. The Leviathan Rias looked at them and simply giggled before putting on a condescending pout. Oh honey, don't tell me you don't recognize your own wife? The Leviathan said in a mocking voice. Cut the bullshit, Riser shouted back angrily as Leviathan Rias' gaze turned to the Rio Rias. Rias, nice to meet you again. Is this a better form for you? She said as she morphed into Issei. You! Many from the Citri and Gremry peerages shouted at the sight of the Leviathan who beat them down back at Ko Academy. Yes, it is me. Please, no applause, Issei joked as he walked over to a nearby person. The person looked at him in shock as Issei grabbed his drink out of his hand. He then gulped the drink down in one shot before tossing the glass to the ground, causing it to shatter. So much arrogance in this room, don't you think we should change this? Issei remarked as he plunged his fist into the man's stomach, causing black blood to flow from the victim's mouth, much to the shock of everyone in the room. Issei retracted his arm and stared directly at Sona Citri. Remember my promise to you, President Sona? Let's start the countdown to the devil's extinction. Issei glanced lazily at the angry faces of the devils in the room before glancing at the devil he just impaled. The devil was falling to the ground in front of him. Now, the body hit the floor. Issei grinned as many of the devils launched magical attacks at him. Issei rolled to his right, turning into the fallen angel Rainier in the process. Rainier materialized a magical circle, blocking the attacks from hitting her. The circle was not powerful enough to block the more powerful attacks, which shattered the circle and sent her flying into a wall. Let's get this party started, she shouted as she displayed her wings and took to the air. Ares muttered an incarnation, causing a green fog to briefly appear over the devils before disappearing. What did you do? Sona asked before she was punched into a wall. Her eyes opened wide as she saw it was Kaneko who did it, her eyes completely red. A little spell that simply frees the beast within you devils. This place just became a free-for-all fight club to the death. I am the god of war after all. A giant melee erupted in the ballroom. The devils started attacking each other indiscriminately, with the Leviathan taking advantage of the chaos to performing some killing. Ares stabbed several devils to death with his Xiphos. Guan Yu hacked the heads off of any devil foolish enough to attack him. Dracula bit any nearby devil and injected them with Leviathan blood while drinking theirs. Rainier in the meantime hurled light spears at the devils, laughing maniacally as she approached any wounded devil before consuming them. "What's up, bitch?" Rainier was blindsided by a punch which sent her to the floor. She rolled out of the way of a stomp before flipping back to her feet. Her assailant was a delinquent-looking devil with blue hair and tattoos on his face. Glaciolabilas. Rainier smirked as she materialized a light spear, which she plunged into the devil's stomach before eating him. She was then thrown into a table by a fireball. "That's the spirit. Fight for your lives, you filth," Rainier jeered as she got back up. The giant melee lasted a few minutes. The great hall was littered with broken plates, shattered glasses, and dead bodies. "And there were none," Rainier said after consuming a devil named Diodora Astaroth. She glanced at the carnage of the room. She saw several of the co-devils dead, and it made her smile. Aquino was burnt to a crisp, Kaneko was stabbed with one of Kiba's swords, Sona was headless, and Rias was completely destroyed from the waist down. She then searched for Riser Phoenix, whose corpse she found lying face down in the punch bowl. The smile on her face was still there as she turned to see Ares consuming a young woman and Guan Yu hacking the head of a devil that was behind Ares. "I must commend you for surviving this long," Ares clapped as the 4 Leviathan advanced towards the 8 remaining devils by the stage. The devils are gritting their teeth, their fists clenched, and eyes red. "Why aren't they attacking each other or us?" Dracula asked as he scanned the room for any survivors and found none due to his enhanced senses. "They're the most powerful of the devils. The Satans, Graphia Lucifuge, number 1 ranked Ihauser Belial, number 6 Cranius Valak, and number 9 Valerian Oriax," Guan Yu said. "This my madness," Ajuka Beelzebub said as he put his hand to his head. It seems the spell is wearing off," Ares remarked in a surprised tone. "Well, they are at the top of their society. I suppose trash can stand up to the power of a god," Guan Yu said as the devils regained their senses, the look of anger obvious in their eyes. "You so brazenly attack us and kill a great number of us," Surzex Lucifer said, his voice dripping with venom. His killing intent radiated throughout the room as a faint red glow enveloped his body. "I thought you would like this, brother. I am free from Riser now, and you can love me as much as you want," Issei taunted as he transformed into Rias Gremory. "Unforgivable!" A giant burst of destructive energy erupted from Surzex as the power of destruction engulfed his body. The room trembled at this, causing the Leviathan to be slightly worried. The walking power of destruction advanced towards the Leviathan, causing the group to back up in fear. What are we doing? Let's kill this devil already," Dracula shouted, charging at the super devil. When Dracula touched the devil, he was instantly destroyed. The look of fear on the Leviathan went away as they saw the puddle of black goo reassemble into Dracula. "Ha ha 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 ha. That was amazing. To see the looks on your faces." "Enough of that though," Dracula said as he displayed his jaws out and tried to grab Surzex, who returned back to normal. Surzex jumped back with an extremely fearful look on his face, dodging the Leviathan that just tried to eat him. "You see who you are dealing with now? We can't be killed, we can't be hurt. Nothing will stop us from killing all of you and reclaiming our place at the top," Ares boasted with an extremely smug look on his face. "No, you're wrong." Everyone looked at the source of that voice. It was the former heir of the Astaroth family and currently Beelzebub. Anything that lives can die. It is just a matter of figuring it out. Ajuka Beelzebub turned to his fellow devils. "We can trap them and figure out their weakness." All of the devils' eyes widened at this. "Yes, let's try that," Graphia exclaimed as the Leviathan laughed. "You'll be dead before you can mutter the incarnation," Guan Yu said, rushing at Ihauser Belial. Ihauser ducked out of the way and grabbed Guan Yu by the hand before throwing him back. "Cohibit Catenebrarum," Ajuka said, holding his hand out. A black magic circle in front of the hand before disappearing and then reappearing, this time on Ares' chest. What is this?" Ares screamed out, lightning crackling around his body. "I can't move," he shouted as the Leviathan stared with wide open eyes at the devils who began chanting. "Annunciate Sinari Kamali, Tenebris Obscurare ens in conspectu tuo," Graphia and Surzex shouted respectively. "I can't move. I'm stuck," Guan Yu and Dracula shouted as Rias contemplated what to do. "Crap, this isn't good. Tactical retreat. Distract and then grab them and go." Rias launched a stream of power of destruction at the devils, who blocked it with magical circles. "Wah!" were the only words Rias could get out before she was completely encased in ice. She was frozen in a block of ice, with more pillars being formed in front of her. Her last image was that of Seraphal Leviathan pointing her wand at her before her vision went black. "Alright, that was fun," Leviathan Rias shouted as soon as the ice shattered around her. Before she could do anything, an incarnation was said, and before the Leviathan knew it, her body was moving on its own, being sat down in a chair that was behind her. Chains were being put on her by someone that she couldn't see, and this person was thorough in restraining her. "Oh, Ajuka, it's you!" Rias exclaimed, her sight being limited to straightforward because of the incarnation. Ajuka Beelzebub, dressed in a white lab coat with a variety of instruments that would make any sane being fear what was going to happen next. "You know, I don't know how you managed to trap and restrain me, but you do know that I will escape, right?" Rias mocked the Satan. Ajuka frowned at this as he picked up a syringe before flicking it. He examined the red fluid in it before giving the syringe a quick twirl. "Oh, is that what this part is?" Rias asked, her eyes traveling to the tray of tools in front of her. "What am I, your guinea pig?" "Alright, I'll play along. I thought you'd be kinkier though. I do suppose that is my brother though." "Where is?" Ajuka found a vein and poked the syringe in, injecting the fluid into the Leviathan's blood. "Ah! What the hell is that?" Rias screamed out. "It works," Ajuka muttered before he put down the syringe. Rias started laughing maniacally at this. "How was my acting?" "That's quite, thinking that would harm me." "Round 2? Rias smiled as Ajuka groaned, writing something down in a small book that he pulled out of his lab coat. Rias' eyes traced the pen as he wrote. "Let me help you with that." Test number 1. Crap mixture fails to do anything other than make Rias happy. Kisses and hugs. Rias joked as Ajuka put the book on the tray before picking up a sealed bottle with a clear liquid in it. "Waterboarding? Aren't we moving too far too fast? Never knew you were so bold." Ajuka didn't speak as unsealed the bottle and poured the contents on Rias's forehead. Water," Rias said as some of the water made its way down to Rias' mouth. "Very holy water." Rias spat out some of the collected water at Ajuka's face, causing him to recoil a bit in pain. "Punch! That's the spirit. That, tastes awful. Almost as bad as unicorns," the Leviathan joked. While Ajuka was busy writing down the results of the latest test, Rias tried making a fist, but couldn't. "That spell is still binding. I still can't move." Rias thought about it, before a startling realization came to mind. Magical incarnations can't work here. He is blocking my magic somehow. Rias' only hope for escape were gone. The next few days were a blur for the Leviathan. Every day, at the same time, Ajuka would enter the room to conduct his experiments for the day. Rias had to admit that the super devil was creative. The Leviathan was shot at, had spells cast on, and physically tortured, but nothing worked to kill her. Several things did cause her extreme pain and discomfort to say the least though. Rias did not know why or how, but cleaning product caused her to want to die rather than having any more of it poured on her. This piqued the interest of the scientist super devil, who tried many variations of cleaning product on the Leviathan. Each damaged the Leviathan to some degree, causing the Leviathan to lash out. Ajuka made a note to try to find the common links between the cleaning products in order to make dedicated anti-Leviathan weapon. The Leviathan, while upset and angry, continued to taunt the super devil. "You're a scientist, you'll figure it out eventually. Do you think you could figure out in a week what monsters have been trying to do to us for eons? Not much of a talker. I can respect that. You won't be needing your vocal cords soon anyways." Rias tapped her foot impatiently as she awaited Ajuka's arrival. She managed to regain complete movement of her body as the spell began to wear off. The door was kicked open, causing her eyes to widen at the person who walked in. A smile curled up on Rias' lips. "Brother, come to put your lovely sister out of her misery?" she asked, her eyes trailing down to the machete he held in his hand. "Shut up," he shouted, rushing over with superhuman speed to grab her by the hair and slice off her head. When a Leviathan's head is detached from the body, the head will reattach itself, given enough time. Now the decapitated Leviathan is still capable of thought, facial movements, and listening to the conversation that was taking place in the room. "It worked," Ajuka spoke as the head blinked following the sound of scribbling, probably in a notebook. "Indeed. I can't believe we overlooked decapitation as a viable way to kill these creatures." Rias rolled her eyes at Surzex, thinking her killed her. "So stun them and then decapitate them should be the standard procedure then?" Surzex continued, asking his friend. "It appears so. That being said, it should only be used as a last resort. Spells do seem to do the trick of neutralizing them. Decapitation in the heat of battle will be hard against these creatures. Stun them with spells and then decapitate." Ajuka reasoned. He paused for a moment. Once I complete the weapon against them, we should have no problem cutting off their heads. He finished. What should we do with that, and the rest of them? Surzex asked. Rias felt Surzex glancing at her headless corpse as he spoke. Don't know, bury them in the back? Ajuka said casually. Rias' head was placed in a black trash bag with a white gloved hand. Inside of the dark bag she saw the heads of the other Leviathan that were captured. The heads moved about for a few minutes before being dumped into a shallow grave. They aren't smart enough to separate us from our bodies. Stupid devils, Rias thought as she located her body in the shallow grave, which was covered by dirt. She saw the other Leviathan move towards their bodies as she moved towards hers. The process was rather hard, given all the dirt in the way. The black blood from the Leviathan seeped through the dirt and made contact with the body. The head becomes reattached as the black blood heals and seals up the neck wound. Rias blinked her eyes and clenched her fists. Complete control of body. Good, let's get out of this dirt pile. Rias felt a tremendous amount of pressure from the dirt above her, and summoned all of her strength to move the dirt above. It took a few attempts, but Rias managed to claw her way out of her grave. She glanced around, making sure that there were no devils in the nearby area. As she saw none, she breathed a sigh of relief and started to remove the dirt over the rest of the shallow grave. Took you long enough, Dracula said, spitting out dirt from his mouth onto Rias' face. Rias groaned, wiping off the dirt from her face before sending a glare back at Dracula. Dracula placed Ares' head back on his body while Rias did the same for Guan Yu. The four Leviathans stood up and got out of the shallow grave before pondering their next move. So, Guan Yu said, breaking the awkward silence. What now? He finished. All of the Leviathan glanced at Rias, as she technically was the leader due to the second naming her as second in command. We go back to second. He might be upset that we were captured, but he will be understanding. Did you get any of their DNA? Rias asked. The Leviathans shook their heads. Rias sighed at the development. They were careful. Ajuka probably told them to be careful with physical contact without gloves or clothing, Rias said in an upset tone. Anyways, let's head back to the headquarters. We need to tell the boss of the developments against us. So once again cleaning products? Fried asked, slowly and with his eyes narrowed in disbelief. Yes, for the third time. It felt like my face was melting off. It burned me, all of the different products he tested on me, Rias explained as the four escaped Leviathans stood in front of their leader. Fried has his hands on the table as he digested the information his subordinates brought back to him. That is troubling. If they find out what is making us hurt and weaponize it, it causes us great trouble, Fried muttered to himself. He then glanced over at Hera, who was sitting down at a nearby table with headphones on, scribbling down in a notebook. We will run our own tests to see what exactly it is that causes us to be in pain. While you were gone, we've made progress, Fried said, gesturing at Hera. The rescue team made it, thanks, Ares remarked sarcastically. Fried shot him an unfriendly glare, causing him to instantly shut up. We've located more tablets, and then we lost them. You what? Rias shouted, before remembering who she shouted at. Calm down, Rias, it is all part of the plan, Fried remarked calmly, unfazed by Rias' outburst. We've lost the tablets to those humans, who've taken the profit, Fried explained, with air quotes over lost. Those in the so-called hero faction? Dracula asked. Precisely. We placed the spell each of the tablets, allowing us to listen in on the humans. As luck would have it, they've been successful in translating the tablets, Fried said with a slight smile. The tablets acts like a bug then? Ares asked, to which Fried nodded. We made it convincing. We released information to the heroes, allowing them to find us. We put up a fight and were oh so disappointed when the tablets were stolen from us. Fried chuckled. Those gullible humans. Rias laughed. Still, the body of work from the prophet seems to be flowing to us very slowly, Fried sighed, glancing over at Hera. All of our resources are currently on standby. We have no major operations underway. Yasaka rushed over when Fried called her name. What is it? Buy me as much cleaning product as you can. Yasaka nodded at Fried's command. The four escaped Leviathan paled at this. You don't mean? Ares started before he met a chilling smile from Fried. You didn't think you would get off that easily, did you? Since you were captured, they know our weakness, Fried screamed, scaring the Leviathan. Everyone working stopped and stared at their leader. Now you're going to help me find out what is it that makes cleaning products so effective against us. It is my job to ensure that you properly atone for your sins of being captured. I am a priest after all. With that, the gates will slam shut. Hera smiled after scribbling down the last of the information on the tablets. We have what we need, she said, a small smile appearing on her face. Test number 147 complete. Fried muttered emotionlessly as the 4 Leviathan in front of him gritted their teeth in pain. It is done, boss, it is done! Fried glanced towards the sound of the noise and saw a frantically running Hera with several notebooks in her hands. The translation on all the tablets is finally complete, he remarked, handing over the clipboard he held to Yasaka. Hera nodded as she stopped in front of him. The other cleaning product doused Leviathan have recovered at this point, and have gathered around Hera and Fried. Yes, more than that though. Everything they've said, tablet-wise or plan-wise, has been recorded down, Hera stated. Fried had to hear everything for himself. It is all on playback? Hera nodded. Fried just smiled and went inside. Fried is sitting down by a small tape recorder, with headphones in his ears. Leviathan are users of technology and magic, having mastered both relatively quickly. Loki found a way for the spell's effects to be able to be heard through an electronic medium, and therefore recorded. I do believe that we should seal the underworld first. The devils are too preoccupied with the Leviathan threat that they won't see us coming. They are also the more dangerous party. We haven't seen them since our encounter with them. Indeed. We do need the blood of one of the Satans, and a fallen angel leader to seal hell. We should acquire those items just before we seal the gates. I agree. Leonardo, any objections? Very well, we are going to seal the gates of hell. Good, chow chow, you go do that, Fried smirked. We've made a plan that shall bring us one step closer to our goals. The humans have opted to seal the gates of hell, so while they do that, Fried paused for dramatic effect. All the Leviathans stared at him with wide-open eyes. We will seal the gates of heaven. To seal the gates of heaven, we need to complete the trials, Fried said. Trials? Yasaka asked. Tests designed by God. Similar to the tasks of Hercules, fewer but probably more dangerous, Fried said. How many are we looking at? Loki asked. 3 of them. To kill the fish that swallowed Jonah, purge heaven of an unclean guilty soul, and to twist an angel. Everyone remained silent at the announcement of the trials. So, does it matter in which order these tasks are done? And do they need to be done by one or can it be done by all of us to hasten the closing of heaven? Ares questioned. That is a good question. It doesn't specify the order, but given the way they were written, I'd imagine the big man wants it done that way. Done by one person, as far as I could tell by the way the prophet worded it, Fried explained. So, who is going to do it? Hera asked. Whoever completes the first task will do it. We will all go together to ensure the tasks are completed, but whoever kills the first will say the spell and from there on complete the rest of the tests, Fried said, to much understanding from the rest of the Leviathan. All of this sounds good, but shouldn't we wait until the humans are close to finishing their hell trials? Rias asked. Fried tilted his head in confusion. Explain. If they know that we are completing the heaven trials, they know that we somehow spied on them. So? Fried asked, wondering what his subordinate was getting at. So, they might stop doing the trials. If they know that we are going through with the trials, they might stop because they figure that we will do the hell trials as well, given everything we've done to the devils. I find that highly unlikely, given Chow Chow's reputation and ambitions. Still, he might think about it pragmatically. Why would he need to get his hands dirty when he can wait for us to deal with the angels, then the devils, and then he can deal with us directly? Enemy of my enemy is my friend. Especially if we are going to close the hell gates anyways and all that stuff. Fried thought long and hard about Rias' words. He sighed and then stared at the eager Leviathan before speaking. Rias makes a good point. We will wait until the humans are nearing the end of the hell trials. Beside, we won't have to wait long, the humans are already on the move. They've just completed the second trial, Yasaka said to Fried, who is currently reading an old grimoire. They've rescued a soul from hell and delivered it to heaven, Fried said, closing the book and setting it on the table near to him. Who did they rescue anyways? Fried asked, getting up and stretching. Asia Argento. Argento. Why does name ring a bell? Fried tapped his chin as he tried to remember where he heard that name. She was a former holy nun, famous for her healing sacred gear. Kicked out for healing a devil. She was actually supposed to join Rainier and her group, but then we happened. Rias chuckled, turning into Rainier briefly before turning back into Rias. Indeed. I was wondering what happened to her. The fallen angels died, leaving her with no one. Interesting that she was in hell. What happened? Fried asked Yasaka. From everything I gathered, she was turned by a Diodora Astaroth, heir to the Astaroth clan and brother to Ajuka Beelzebub. Devil had a nun fetish it seems, and more than likely raped her. Chow Chow freed her after battling through Diodora's peerage. Yasaka explained. Diodora? I killed him at the party. Rias explained, turning into Diodora before a look of disgust came onto his face. Wow, I am a sick little bastard, he said with a look of contempt as he turned into Rias. It was a good thing that you only killed Diodora and not his peerage. Made it easy for Chow Chow and his group to find an innocent soul from a group of former nuns, I suppose. Fried shrugged his shoulders. Anyways, should we start our trials now? Dracula asked, sipping a cup of tea nearby. Fried nodded. Everyone, let's get ready to catch ourselves a big fish. The Leviathan teleported themselves to the surface before taking flight. Those with wings used their wings, everyone else used levitation spells. They are over the Mediterranean Sea, extremely bored because they've been roaming around for a few hours now. Ugh, how long have we been flying around? Guan Yu complained as he floated on a small cloud. Enough to know that you are still annoying, Hera mocked as she levitated. Why did I get stuck with these two? Rias thought in annoyance. As the Mediterranean Sea is extremely vast, Fried split the Leviathans into 4 teams, each consisting of 3 Leviathan. Everyone again, Fried said. Before splitting up, Fried cast a spell that acted like an open radio frequency, allowing all of the Leviathan to communicate with each other, even over long distances. Rhea sighed as she spoke the words that were supposed to get the magical fish out of the water and in the open. Quacump die invocavero T, Sacros Abyssai. Unveil T, Surge Coelacanth, 12 voices said simultaneously. Nothing over here, Dracula said. Same here, Yasaka added. Geez God, couldn't you be more specific than the sea between Jaffa and Tarshish? Loki moaned. Rias was about to add something before a deep rumbling sound was heard near her. The 2 other Leviathan also stopped to look at the sea below them. The rumbling became ever louder before a high-pitched sound pierced the sky. The Leviathan's eyes shot wide open as a massive black coelacanth, easily over 400 meters and covered in Enochian symbols, leapt out of the water. It's Moby Dick, Guan Yu shouted. Roger that. All units head to where Alpha Group is. Understood. Roger. Got it. Rias frowned as the big fish jumped out of the ocean, it roaring as broke the surface. Ah! The 3 Leviathan yelled, annoyed by the high-pitched wail the coelacanth emitted. Let's shut it up, Rias said, launching a stream of power of destruction at the beast. Guan Yu launched several blades of wind at the thrashing beast, while Hera laughed as she turned the water around the beast into acid. All of these attacks, while making the beast cry out in pain, did not stop it as the coelacanth started to gather energy to launch in an energy beam from its mouth. The 3 Leviathans circled the beast from various angles before the beast suddenly shut its mouth and dived into the ocean. The 3 Leviathan followed, turning into the fearsome sea beasts that God originally made them as. They rushed at the coelacanth as masses of black goo, devouring any unfortunate fish in their path as they followed the coelacanth to the depths of the ocean. The Leviathan neared the coelacanth, while suddenly jerked its head in an unnatural position before opening its mouth and firing a ball of pure power at the pursuing Leviathan. Guan Yu and Rias managed to dodge, but Hera wasn't as fortunate and got directly hit by the ball, causing her explode. The force of the blast launched all 3 of the Leviathan back to the surface. Rias slowed her speed down before she hit any of their reinforcements, which had just arrived on scene. Ah, that the work of the fish? Fried said, not caring that Guan Yu rammed into him at full speed. Yes. All of our attacks didn't kill the thing, Hera exclaimed just as the coelacanth broke the surface again. Wait, I've seen those before. Fried muttered as he briefly glanced at the fish which fell back into the sea. He turned into Kokabil. I knew I saw those Enochian protection sigils before in his memories, Kokabil exclaimed as he furrowed his brow. Raphael carved those sigils into the fish. It protects it from all attacks. He finished as Yasaka scorched the fish with blue fire, causing it to roar in anger. No, there must be a way to kill it, Guan Yu said as he launched a beam of energy from his spear at the fish, causing the water around it to explode. Yes, maybe it just protects the outside. We can try killing it from the inside, Rias said as Kokabil nodded. It is worth a try, Kokabil said as he turned his attention to the other Leviathan, who are attacking the fish by various magical attacks. Everyone! Stun the bastard! By Rias' time to get inside of it. Everyone yelled in response. Loki and Shalba Beelzebub used lightning on the fish, electrocuting it, which caused it to thrash about wildly. Indra used a sleeping spell to subdue the fish and Rias flew into the fish. The fish awoke in a fury, thrashing about wildly before diving back down to the sea floor. Should we go after it? Tsukuyomi questioned, breaking the silence of the Leviathan. No, it is up to Rias now. Ugh, me and my bright ideas, Rias muttered in disgust, wiping off slime from her clothes as she surveyed the area inside of the fish. It was smaller than expected. The skeleton of the fish was surrounded by flesh from all sides, but occasionally popped out in the most unexpected of places. A thick fog was inside of the fish, causing Rias to cover her nose from the toxic fumes, even though they wouldn't kill her. She glanced at the bulging veins, crisscrossing within this fish, and traced them back to the source. No way, she muttered, staring at the 3 giant beating hearts in front of her. They are all connected to each other through veins, which gave Rias an idea. Rias licked her lips as she walked up to the middle heart, and plunged her right arm into it. She twisted it, and released some of her black blood into the bloodstream. She then watched as the blood spread to the other hearts as she retracted her arm out. She became surprised as the blood spread outwards, but the fish was still alive. That usually does the trick. Alright, let's do this the old-fashioned way, Rias said before blasting the THRE hearts with a stream of power of destruction. You think she did it? Loki asked Hera as the Leviathan waited around for Rias to return. A blood-curdling scream erupted from the oceans as the fish surfaced, thrashing about as its veins glowed, illuminating the black fish. It continued screaming as blood started to erupt from its mouth and eyes. Rias flew out of the mouth just as a torrent of blood shot out of the dying fish's mouth. Well, she did it. Hera chuckled as Rias flew back to Kokobel. Alright, reciting the spell. Ka na Mdar. Rias said the words as a brief pain came over her body. She coughed violently as the Leviathan gathered around her. Rias, are you okay? Loki asked, a hint of concern in his voice. Yes, I'm fine. If I were human, it'd probably hurt a lot more, she joked as she recovered from her coughing fit. Alright, 1 trial down, 2 more to go. Alright, the second trial. Purge heaven of an unclean guilty soul. Kokobel started before Rias continued. From what we've gathered from various texts, unclean guilty soul is rather straightforward. Those who don't belong in heaven, but have gotten through the pearly gates somehow, Rias said before taking a breath. There are lots of these souls that exist in heaven as they got in through the sale of indulgences back from when the Catholic Church still did that. There are other reasons, of course, but a bulk of the unclean soul come from this source, Rias said before Kokobel started to speak again. This trial should be easy, and we can do a 3-for-1 with this. Get the soul for this trial, grab any angel for the next trial, and steal as many souls for their power as possible. Souls are a source of power for many things, as I'm sure you are all aware. We can keep these souls out of heaven's hands, and we can use them at a later date, should we need to, Kokobel explained, much to the approval of the Leviathans. A contingency plan. Exactly, Kokobel replied to Hera's comment. Now, getting to the plan. We will split into 2 groups. One will be a distraction for the armies of heaven. Heaven has been unreadable since the first trial, but I'm sure that they've reinforced their defenses against any possible attack. I will lead the distraction group on an attack on several churches and monasteries throughout the world. Kokobel continued on before Rias cleared her throat. I will be in charge of the group that will gather the souls. Once heaven dispatches their forces against Kokobel's group, we will sneak into heaven through a backdoor portal. We will land in the 3rd level of heaven, which is right where the souls reside, so it is perfect for us. Rias gave a small sigh before continuing her plan. The spell that allows us access to the portal is only one way. Meaning once we get into heaven, we need to find another way out. Heaven will most likely detect us the moment we get there, so we need to move fast. Grab as many souls as possible, then we fight our way out of heaven. There are 2 layers we need to pass before reaching the gates, which should be easy to bypass. The second heaven should be easy to pass as it is filled with darkness, making it easy to mask our presence against the angels, which will be blind as bats once they are there. Rias explained, stopping as Kokobel jumped in. The second heaven is where rebellious angels are taken before they are sent for re-education. We could free them, forcing heaven to deal with them running amok as we make our escape. Kokobel finished as Rias looked at him with a pouting face. I was about to get to that. Rias groaned while Kokobel just chuckled. Sure, whatever you say, he said, pinching her cheeks. As I was saying, Rias got Kokobel's hands off before continuing. The second level should be easy to pass. The first layer is where we need to be careful as it is where all the lower level angels reside. That in and of itself is no problem. The problem are the brave saints, which also reside there, Rias said, looking at the faces of her fellow Leviathan. They will slow us down from reaching the gates. A bit of an annoyance should be no problem for us, Dracula said, not worried at the least. I agree. We should be able to take on those angels with no problem. Why are we worried about them? Guan Yu asked. That one Longinus user, Delio, could be a problem for us, and given their sheer numbers, it might be a fight, Kokobel said before Rias snapped. Can we get back to the plan? Everyone recoiled at Rias shouting. Regardless of their strength, the first heaven is the last thing standing between us and escaping. We need to prepare for all possibilities, Rias said. Indeed. We will look over all scenarios for both parts of the plan, and have backup plans for everything. We need to strike soon though. The longer we wait, the more time heaven has to consolidate their defenses. Everyone nodded at Kokobil's words before scattering into small groups to plot against heaven. It's been 2 days since the first trial was completed and the Leviathans are ready to move on to the second trial. The Leviathans split into 2 strike teams, each one a different mission. Kokobil with Skriami, Yasaka, Guan Yu, Dracula, and Shalba Beelzebub forms the distraction team. Rias with everyone else will attack heaven. We've been over the plan. I will contact you once we start the attacks. It shouldn't be long before they dispatch units to us. 10 minutes after, Kokobil said sternly to Rias, who looks bored. 10 minutes after, yes, I remember. Rias groaned. Very well. Kokobil said, a brown magical circle forming underneath him. Everyone gathered next to him as the circle began to grow brightly. Let's begin. Shalba Beelzebub crackled with laughter as he cut down fleeing monks with beams of pure devil magic. He spotted another group of fleeing monks, which he promptly killed with devil fire. Kokobil looked on as his Leviathan destroyed a Spanish monastery about 40 kilometers northwest of the city of Madrid. This was the 5th monastery or convent they razed to the ground, and still no attack from heaven. A smile suddenly appeared on his face as the clouds parted ways, revealing hundreds of angels descending from heaven. Hey, we have company! Kokobil shouted at the Leviathans attacking the monastery before turning back to the swarms of angelic warriors descending from heaven. Let's give them a warm welcome. Everyone get in, Rias said, with everyone gathering close to her. The Leviathan stood inside an elaborate Enochian sigil. 6 circles are at the corners of this sigil, which is in the shape of a hexagon. From each corner, a line shoots to the center of the hexagon, dividing the hexagon into 6 equal pieces. Rias sighed as she took out a knife and cut her wrist, letting blood drip into the circle next to her. The other Leviathans followed in her lead, letting their blood flow into the sigil. The blood sigil activated, slowly moving the black blood into the center of the hexagon as it filled the room with a creepy, black fog. Impura et profana other sanguis pingir. Strenuous, the Leviathans shouted in unison, causing the black fog to overtake them. They saw the world around them change as they were shot into heaven, colors swirling around them before changing to a pristine, pearly white all around. The sigil disappeared, allowing the Leviathans to move freely in heaven. They looked around, seeing that they were in a grassy field as far as the eye could see. Blue skies and puffy white clouds adorned the sky above heaven, as funny as that seems to the Leviathans. In the field, there were white balls of pure energy souls. Just there for the taking. All right, take any and every soul you can. Heaven should be here any. Rias stopped as her words came true. Off in the distance, several hundred magical portals opened up. Hordes of angels came from them, each armed with a shield and spear or sword. Stop them from getting the souls, the angels shouted, flying across the battlefield. Rias and the Leviathans gathered any and all nearby souls, and absorbed them into their bodies as the angels drew closer. Rias stood her ground as 2 angels rushed at her, each armed with a spear. Wait, something isn't right, Rias thought as the angels thrusted their spear at her. She dodged one of them, and grabbed the second one with her hand, stopping it from impaling. Arg! This again? Rias roared as she felt the same pain that she felt when she was doused with the cleaning solution by Ajuka Beelzebub. She pushed the spear away, and using her cleaning solution deformed hand, impaling the unfortunate angel. She then rammed her fist through the chest of the second angel, while still having her arm in the first one. Rias gritted her teeth as she retracted her arm, before looking around. Be careful, they have cleaning solution that will hurt us, she shouted before seeing more angels come at her. All right, you angered me, Rias snarled, launching a stream of power of destruction at the oncoming angels. After dispatching those angels, she made her way to some of the other Leviathan, who are gradually moving towards the second heaven. How the hell do they know about our weakness? Ares yelled out, ripping the head of an angel off before throwing it at another angel. I don't know, maybe the devils gave them information about us, Rias said, swatting away a sword before devouring the angel that held it. She then picked a nearby shield and threw it like a frisbee, knocking over several angels in the process. Oh, so the plot thickens then? Ares yelled out, crushing the head of an angel he held in the process. Yeah, we will. Rias ducked underneath a thrown spear before launching a stream of power of destruction at the thrower. Get to the bottom of this later. If the devils and angels are working together, they could assemble the weapon mentioned in our tablet. At this, the Leviathans snarled in anger at the thought of something that can actually kill them. As the Leviathans drew closer to the second heaven, the landscape started to change. The grassy fields and crisp blue skies above were replaced with dirt and gravel while the sky turned a faint gray. An ominous aura was present, accompanied by a thick black fog. The Leviathans drew deeper into the fog which formed the boundary between the third and second heaven. "Stay close, within sight," Rias said as the Leviathans bunched up together. At this point, the Leviathans have escaped the angels' pursuit, for the moment at least. "It's so dark, can't see anything," Hera said, peering her eyes into the darkness. Even with the supernatural powers of the Leviathans, combined with the powers of the forms they are inhabiting, this fog limited their sight and perception. "Feels just like home, doesn't it?" Ares said, cracking a grin. Indra smiled and gave a nod in response. "How do we know where to go?" Hera asked out loud. "We just keep heading forward. We will eventually reach the first heaven," Rias stated before putting her hand up to tell the group to stop. "Patrol," Rias said quietly. Everyone waited a few moments before Rias spoke. "They've passed, let's move on." "Why couldn't we just have taken them?" Quetzalcoatl asked as he followed behind Hera. "We don't want them to alert other angels of our location. I'm sure they have this place of darkness mapped out somehow, and they might be able to set an ambush or something," Rias said simply, turning her attention back to the front. After what seemed like hours of walking, Penemu walked in front of the group and brought it to a halt. "We are nearing the first heaven, see how the ground is different," she said, gesturing to the ground beneath them. Indeed, her words are true. Instead of the dirt of the second heaven, the area they are on is made of asphalt and concrete. "We are getting close." "If I may?" she asked, to which Rias nodded and fell in behind her. Penemu now led the group in a single file line through a burnt-down forest. The black fog was lessening up, although it was still dense enough for the Leviathans to be unable to see very far. Sahario's forest. He used to tend to the forest. It was destroyed during the fallen fell. "Shame, it was quite a lovely place," Penemu said sadly, looking through the memories of the fallen angel leader. After a few minutes of walking through the lifeless forest, the Leviathans made it out the other side. The moment they stepped out of the forest, the fog was gone, confined to the second heaven. What stood in front of them was a sprawling base, with military-style barracks as far as the eye could see. Off in the distance, the pearly white gates and walls of heaven could be seen. The Leviathans could see the angels moving frantically around the base due to their actions in heaven. Rias looked at the entrance to the base, and saw angels standing guard. These angels were much more heavily armed than the angels they faced before. Each angel was armored from head to toe in shining white armor, and carried a massive broadsword. Rias sighed and then turned to the group behind her. "They've mobilized their defenses for us. We will be felt a mile away, so I think we should just launch as much firepower at the gates to make a hole in the wall, and then make a run for it, killing anyone who gets in our way," Rias announced. Everyone nodded and looked at the wall to the right of the gates. They stared at the wall for a few moments, as they readied their strike. When Rias shouted, all of the Leviathans released all of their pent-up energy as powerful energy blasts at the wall. The beams of power shot across heaven before hitting the wall with a tremendous flash of light and deafening blast. Sirens blared as the Leviathans charged at the base. Hundreds of angels took to the sky and launched light spears down at the Leviathans, which normally wouldn't do anything but annoy them. These light spears, however, were tipped in cleaning solution, harming the Leviathan to say the least. Rias screamed out in agony as she pulled out several light spears from her body, which she promptly threw at any angel she could see. By now, scores of angels were pouring out from their barracks, and were swiftly cut down by Loki with his Norse magic or Indra with his Hindu magic. The Leviathans pushed on, running over the corpses of the dead angels as they grew closer to the gaping hole in the wall. As they reached the wall, a dozen angels with shields and spears took up a defensive formation in front of the hole. "You will not get past us," they yelled out, to which Rias rolled her eyes before launching a stream of power of destruction at them. The blast hit the shield formation with no noticeable effect. Magic-canceling shields. "We'll have to do this the old-fashioned way then," Penemu said, charging at the shield formation. She was stabbed several times with cleaning solution-covered spears, causing her to yell out in pain. The others followed suit, also getting stabbed with the spears. Loki pulled out one of the spears and yanked it from the owner. He grabbed the shield and flung it away before punching the angel's chest through the armor. With the break in the formation, Rias and Indra slid in and attacked some angels from the side. They punched through the armor of the angels, killing them as more Leviathans started to use this tactic. Soon, all of these angels lay dead while the Leviathans streamed through the hole. Once on the other side, the white puffy ground stopped suddenly, with the leap down back to earth the only thing in front of them. "Follow me," Rias said, jumping over the edge, and the Leviathans followed, plummeting back to earth in free fall. The Leviathans linked hands as they chanted the spell that would send them back to the underworld. "Nobis concedas transitum per ostium in nigrum, ut ad immundos mundi." A black portal opened up under them and sucked them into before closing up. The Leviathans traveled inside the portal as they saw the opening on the other side. They landed on their feet in their warehouse hideout in the underworld. Oh, back so soon? Yasaka was the first one to address this group of Leviathans. Rias and her group saw everyone from the diversion group with cuts and bruises, but no lasting injuries on their bodies. Indeed. Time to get these things out of me, Rias muttered, wiping off the dust from her clothing. If Issei vas anime. With these words, a bright light enveloped the room as souls flooded out of her. There were many impure souls among the sea of pure souls that she had just released. Kana undar, she yelled as her veins became a glowing red. She fell to the floor as she screamed. Rias! All of the Leviathan gathered near her, looking on with concern. I'm okay, she panted out as she was helped up to her feet. Are you sure? Kokabil asked. Yes, I'm fine. That's dumb. I'm sure that I'd be feeling death right now if I was human. Rias laughed, completely recovering from what happened earlier. Good, we will need you for the tea incoming, Kokabil shouted as the warehouse they landed in exploded. The warehouse collapsed on them and covered them in rubble, but the Leviathan were otherwise unhurt. Rias was the first to dig herself out of the rubble and saw the source of the explosion, before her face twisted into a psychotic smile. What the heo, it's you, brother. Rias stared at the devils who were hovering nearby. One of them is a very angry Surzex Lucifer, with a look of absolute hatred on his face. The others were the rest of the 4 great Satans, heads of clans, or prominent warriors. I am going to kill all of you, he said, the tone of his voice sending chills down even the most battle-hardened warrior. The rest of the devils stared on before looking at the sky, their eyes in alarm. The rest of Leviathans pushed themselves out of the rubble in time to see Michael and several seraphs materialize out of a portal. Oh, and there's more, Kokabil mused, feeling more signatures incoming. Dozens of fallen angels appeared from magic circles that dotted the sky. Azazel, Shemhazai, and Barakiel looked at Michael and his angels before looking at Surzex and his group, then turning his gaze at the Leviathans. So, Kokabil, this is your doing then? Azazel started, loosing using the name Kokabil as he knew that was not the real Kokabil. What is this, Azazel? You and your group of fallen angels just show up near the end and hope to make a difference. Kokabil joked as he looked at his fallen angels. Us against the world, just like it has always been. Indeed, we need to take an angel anyways. Perfect that they hand us one on a silver platter. Kokabil grinned at his Leviathan's responses before looking at the 3 groups of beings that want them dead. Let's fight. Everyone stared at the source of the noise. The Leviathans were curious as a rift opened up, with Chow Chow and a few other humans stepping out of the portal. The blue portal remained open behind them, with Chow Chow surveying the scene at hand, a wide smile on his face. Chow Chow, how nice of you to join us. Although I don't think you came to be on our side, Kokabil grinned, looking at Chow Chow before narrowing his eyes towards a sickly, skeleton-looking boy at the back of the group. What's wrong with him? Everyone was thinking the same thing. No human, regardless of who they are, should be radiating that amount of power. The boy's tall, pale physique was cracking at the seams due to the power his body is currently holding. Oh, Lycurgus? You'll find out shortly. With that, Chow Chow and his 2 companions jumped back into the portal, which disappeared in a great flash of light. Lycurgus, his face stoic for the previous time, cracked an unnerving smile at everyone. He raised his right hand up, with his palm facing away from the supernatural beings. This life was without purpose. I was nothing before Chow Chow rescued me. Gave me an identity, gave me a purpose. He started laughing madly before he continued, for humanity, this shall be worth it. My death shall bring upon peace, a new era. They shall remember me, not as my ancestor of Sparta, but the one who cleansed the earth of devils, angels, and the fallen. He said, making a finger gun with his hand. He shot at the devils, angels, and then fallen, before putting the finger gun to his head. I'll see you all in oblivion. With this, he pressed his thumb and index fingers together. His body shone with the light of a million suns as a tremendous shockwave rocked the underworld. Everyone had to shield their eyes from the tremendous light. Anyone who didn't had their eyes vaporized from the intense luminosity before them. Anyone realized the danger that they were in tried to teleport out of there, but were blocked due to a barrier. All were trapped in an unfolding nuclear devils, and the fallen were vaporized due to the immense light. As beings of darkness, they screamed in agony as they were consumed by the light. Their wings were destroyed, leaving absolutely nothing behind. The angels were killed due to the shockwaves and the unimaginable heat. The light overpowered their angelic grace, causing it to curl up and die. The Leviathans, on the other hand, smiled as the heat disintegrated their bodies, with the shockwave throwing what is left of them into the sky before plummeting back to the ground. There, in a barren, post-apocalyptic wasteland, stood a puddle of black goo. There were droplets scattered around it, with the furthest being 100 meters away. The droplets suddenly flew through the air, and rejoined the puddle of goo. The goo began to rise, taking the form of a young man, before changing into a beautiful woman. The Leviathan, in the form of Rias, cracked her neck and stretched her body a little bit as she looked around. She could see the rest of the Leviathans reforming near her. That didn't kill you? I figured as much, Chow Chow said as he appeared through a portal off in the distance. Nice try through, that was really explosive. What was that? Kokabeel asked, genuinely interested in such a powerful weapon. Thank you, it was not easy to come up with. What is a soul, A small ball of pure energy created by God. A ball of energy that can rival a nuclear reactor. Yes, gather enough of them together, use a self-sacrifice spell to trigger to go into a nuclear meltdown explosion for maximum effect, and you end up with a bunch of dead supernatural beings. It wouldn't kill you though, which would have made everything easier. But we'll remedy that now, Chow Chow explained, rather smugly. Kokabeel smiled and nodded his head at the explanation. A soul bomb? How'd you get all the souls necessary for something of this size? And why before the battle? I thought you'd want us to kill each other off before you come in and save the day, Kokabeel sarcastically said. It was rather simple. Hell had a lot of souls that were there for the taking. Those fools wouldn't have been able to kill you. The epic battle would have been a waste of time. Might as well get to the end result faster, shall we? I do have humanity to protect now, Chow Chow said, pulling out a bone in his left hand while pointing the spear at Kokabeel with his right hand. You've outlived your usefulness. Prepare to die. Wait, how'd you find us anyways? We've masked our presence, so it'd be impossible to find us, Rias said, bring up a valid point. Chow Chow simply laughed, and pointed at George. The river ends at the source, does it not? We knew that you were listening in, all along. An Etruscan spell, correct? It was, I admit, difficult to find a spell to trace it back to the source, but George managed to find one. Let's just say we let it slip where you were to the factions, and the rest is history, Chow Chow proudly explained. Wipe as many of them out with a nuclear weapon, then kill the survivors, you. I thank you truly, for allowing this to happen. I will be the one to rid all of you beings from here, to protect humanity, Chow Chow continued. Why go through this trouble? We could have worked together. You could have locked up hell and we'd have gotten heaven in due time. Also, good on you for creating that bone. Must have taken some arm pulling to get all the blood need for that, Kokabeel said, glancing at the bone in Chow Chow's possession as he tilted his head at Chow Chow, before a sad, pitying smile appeared on his face. I know what it is, unchecked ambition, your pride and arrogance. I admire your tenacity, Chow Chow. The little human that was touched by God, the one that could. You should have not overstepped your abilities, you little maggot. You'll never defeat us, Kokabeel taunted. Chow Chow simply closed his eyes and sighed. I agree. My pride is honor. I will not have pride with honor as long as there are things that threaten humanity. As for the angels and devils, cut off their leadership. Look around you, the viceroys of heaven and hell are here. The pillars of hell and the lieutenants of heaven converged here. New leadership will arise, I'm sure. Chaos before unity, war. Civil wars in heaven and hell, rival factions vying to take up the mantle. I frankly don't care, have them kill each other off for the rest of eternity, if that is their wish. The gates of both will be sealed up after your deaths, and they will be too busy killing each other to find out how to undo them for a while. Chaos in heaven and hell, peace on earth. We'll have succeeded. Now it is just you and the monsters, which will fall down like a house of cards. So in essence you're strong, I can see that. All the more reason as to why you need to die. Your deaths will pave the way for humanity's everlasting peace, Chow Chow said, looking at George and Leonardo beside him. Both of them nodded at him. He acknowledged them before turning back to the Leviathan. Enough of this. Time to die. George, if you will. George nodded as he and Leonardo began to chant. Chow Chow extended his true Longinus at the nearest Leviathan, which was Penemu. She launched a light spear at him, to which he easily dodged. Clouds suddenly formed above the battlefield and a downpour began on the battling forces. Arg! It stings! This again? The rain of Borax hurt the Leviathan, melting through their skin as they screamed. Chow Chow took advantage of the hurt Leviathan and stabbed Penemu in the stomach with the bone. Penemu stumbled back, in shock at being stabbed with the bone of the righteous mortal. Black waves emitted from Penemu as she started to laugh. She tried to lunge at Chow Chow, but missed as the human jumped back. The downpour caused intense pain for several of the Leviathans, who were in too much pain to move as Penemu exploded in a torrent of black goo. Interesting. It takes them with her as they die. Good to know, Chow Chow said, narrowing his eyes at the 4 remaining Leviathan, Kokobile, Rias, Dracula, and Ares, who was recovered from the reign of Borax, stared at each other before staring at the smug human that just killed several Leviathan. You're out. Nice try though, Kokobile said, laughing as Chow Chow brought a dagger. The dagger was with an ornate pearl handle, with the blade being made of bone. The knife was no larger than 6 inches in total length. You know, the first was just to see if you would die. I got enough of these to finish you off, Chow Chow said, throwing the blade at Ares, who dodged it easily. Chop up the bone enough to make several blades. The tablets didn't say that the bone had to be intact, Chow Chow joked, pulling out another dagger. He rushed at Dracula, who tried to slash at him with his claws. Chow Chow parried the attacks with his true Longinus, before turning around to push Ares away with a kick to the stomach. Dracula managed to hit Chow Chow in the chest, causing the human to wince in pain. The human managed to spin around, stabbing Ares with the true Longinus before stabbing him with the dagger. Ares tried to pull it out as waves began to emit from him, but to no avail. He disappeared just as Chow Chow jumped out of range to be sucked in. Chow Chow backflipped before landing on his feet, facing the 2 remaining Leviathan. Unlucky, that explosion took out the other one, Chow Chow said, sliding the true Longinus over his shoulder with his sling as he took out 2 daggers. He held the blades in a reverse grip as he lunged at Rias, who jumped back in surprise. Kokobile tried to stab him with a light spear, but Chow Chow slipped his head away at the last minute, causing the blade to nick him in the face. Blood dripped from Chow Chow's face, but the human ignored it, punching Rias in the stomach before trying to slice her throat with the dagger. Rias stumbled back from the punch before catching the human's wrist. She easily held the wrist, preventing Chow Chow from pulling back or stabbing her. The human headbutted her, causing her to pull back, allowing him enough time to thrust the dagger in the Leviathan's stomach. He smiled at Rias's stunned face as he twisted the dagger in her stomach, causing her more pain. The human push-kicked Rias back as he rolled to the side to prevent being caught in the coming explosion. Chow Chow continued to roll, avoiding Kokobile's light spear thrusts at the ground. Kokobile's spear was kicked away, allowing Chow Chow enough time to get to his feet to face the leader, the last Leviathan left standing. The 2 said nothing to each other as they circled each other. Chow Chow pointed a dagger at Kokobile, who in turn pointed a light spear at the human. Chow Chow circled the other way, before zigzagging at Kokobile as he lunged in with a wide slash. Kokobile prevented getting hit by blocking the arm with his arm. He released the light spear he was holding to punch Chow Chow 3 times in the stomach before hitting him in the face with an uppercut. Chow Chow spit blood at Kokobile, who grinned. The human stepped in with a kick to the leg, as he tried a stab to the face. Kokobile slipped his head to the side, which was Chow Chow wanted. The human suddenly rotated his upper body, spinning around to stab Kokobile in the side of the face. Kokobile grabbed Chow Chow in a bear hug before the human could get away. Chow Chow tried to get away, but the Leviathan's grip was too strong. Chow Chow, George and Leonardo said as they moved towards Chow Chow. Stay back, Chow Chow shouted. He knew what was going to happen. Kokobile started to laugh maniacally as Chow Chow saw the black waves emit from the Leviathan who was holding onto him. Hee hee. I'm taking you with me. The last thing George and Leonardo saw was Chow Chow closing his eyes as a sea of black came over him. What now? Leonardo asked, tugging at the magician's sleeve. Let's finish what he started. He would have wanted us to close the gates, George said, turning around and walking away. Leonardo stared at the spot Chow Chow was last at, before turning away and following George. Do you think he'll come back? Leonardo asked. George stopped and mused the question. He turned to the younger boy, a slight smile forming on his face. He always does. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Skylinemaster for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.